Well, hello everyone. Did you guys miss me? I certainly missed you guys. It's great to be back. This isn't my usual time, but as you can tell, things are a little different. I've upgraded the Goldie Show a little bit. You can see I have a different background. I have a microphone now. I have a camera. Um, so yeah, like I was kind of working on setting things up and figuring it all out. And yeah, the Goldie Show is back, and I'm going to get started again with my usual times, weekdays at 12 noon Eastern. But I figured I might as well do a test run and see if all my equipment is working. So yeah, let me know if there's any audio issues or if there's any video issues or whatever the case might be. I think everything is finally set up perfectly. The only thing though is that I'm used to like looking at my camera when I'm speaking, like at my webcam. But now that I have like a camera set up, this is where the camera is, but this is where the screen is. So yeah, I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit, so I have to get used to that. And yeah, I missed all of you guys as well. It's really great to be back and have a great show today. I don't know if you've noticed, but Qatar has been in the news a lot recently, and so I figured I would do a little bit of a Qatar 101. Well, it's Qatar, but in English, it's pronounced Qatar. So I figured I would do a little bit of a Qatar 101 and share a little bit of information because a lot of people don't know too much about Qatar. You don't really hear about it. Um, and yet, Qatar is responsible for a lot of the terrorism that we're seeing. Not just in the Middle East, but in North America as well. So I'm just going to begin here with a little bit of a Qatar 101 primer here. So, it's officially the state of Qatar. It's a country in West Asia or the Middle East. As you can tell, here it is. Tiny little Gulf country right there in the Middle East, right on the Persian Gulf. And shares a border with Saudi Arabia, and the rest of its territory is surrounded by the Persian Gulf. The Gulf of Bahrain, an inlet of the Persian Gulf, separates Qatar from Bahrain. The capital is Doha. It's home to over 80% of the country's inhabitants. Most of the land area is made up of flat, low-lying desert. It's been ruled by a hereditary monarchy, by the House of Thani, since 1868, and it became a British protectorate, and then it gained independence in 1971. You may have heard about the Doha Forum, which is happening right now. I'm going to dive into the Doha Forum tomorrow and talk a little bit about the people who are there and who Qatar is platforming. That includes the Islamic Republic occupying Iran. So it makes you wonder, this state that claims, it's an ally of the United States, and yet they are constantly platforming Islamic terrorists. And of course, they're also responsible for a lot of the indoctrination that you are seeing in North America as well. So I'm just going to start with, I want to start with this post here. So this was posted by Amichai Shikli. He is the Minister of Diaspora and Combating Anti-Semitism. And this is what he had to say. He said, Doha, the world capital of the Muslim Brotherhood and the ATM of Hamas, is opening this weekend its annual terror laundering gala, the Doha Forum. On stage, under crystal chandeliers, are Ahmed al-Shara, former al-Qaeda commander who drowned Syria in blood, now scrubbed and airbrushed as Mr. President; Javad Zarif, foreign minister of Iran's terror regime. Javad Zarif is well known to Iranians. He is a terrorist. He has the blood of hundreds of thousands of Iranians on his hands. Hakdan Fidan, Erdogan's Islamist enforcer. If you guys don't know Erdogan, who is the president of Turkey, he is also connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, a terrorist organization. All beaming for Al Jazeera, the global megaphone of the Muslim Brotherhood. I have spoken about Al Jazeera before, but I will be speaking about Al Jazeera again in this episode and also in future episodes. He continues to write a brief reminder of the terror money trail. Hundreds of millions to Al Qaeda in Syria, hundreds of millions of dollars every year to the Taliban through Doha banks. The Taliban are the Islamist terrorist group that currently controls Afghanistan, and they've turned life into a living hell for Afghan women. Qatari charities caught funneling money to Al Shabaab. If Al Shabaab sounds familiar, that's because Al Shabaab has recently been in the news, especially in the United States, with the allegedly $8 billion money laundering scam by certain members of the Somali community in Minnesota. Al Shabaab is the Islamist terrorist group that is very powerful in Somalia. So Qatar charities are also funneling money to Al Shabaab. And of course, more than $2 billion have been given to Hamas. And who flies in to bless the spectacle? Tucker Carlson, Mr. I'm just asking questions, the man who described Hamas jihadists as a political party and wondered what is so bad about Sharia law, now arriving with his entourage to bow before Qatar's prime minister on stage. CNN star Christiane Amanpour. Iranians, we do not like Christiane Amanpour. She has been whitewashing the crimes of the terrorist Islamic Republic for a very, very long time. So Christiane Amanpour is there. And of course, Francesca Albanese, Hamas's cheerleader at the United Nations and on the world stage. Sunday preachers of human rights, Monday hostesses for every blood-soaked Islamist foreign minister on earth. In the end, just as in Tolkien's epic, the real question floating above the hall is not political. It is the oldest moral test known to humanity. Can a person refuse the temptation of power, money, and prestige when they are offered in the service of evil? In Doha, this test is not merely failed, it is celebrated. And here you can see just exactly some of the people who are speaking at the Doha Forum right now, Doha being the capital of Qatar. So you see Ahmed Al Shara there, you see Hakan Fidan, who is part of the Muslim Brotherhood, while Duda, the Gaza bureau chief, right? So he's basically the mouthpiece for Hamas. You've got Christiane Amanpour there. You've got Francesca Albanese. Of course, Tucker Carlson with his weird smiling grin. And of course, you have Javad Zarif, who is part of the terrorist Islamic Republic occupying Iran. And so Qatar is not hiding the fact that they are out here promoting and platforming Islamic terrorists. And so, for those of you who are in the West, you should ask the question, why is Qatar, who claims to be an ally of the United States, platforming certain Islamic terrorists? Well, that's because Qatar is not actually your ally. Qatar has never been your ally. And I've actually found a number of videos on YouTube that I want to share with you all. Some of them go back, some of them are more recent, some of them go back quite a number of years. So, it just goes to show that this is not something new. Qatar did not just recently turn into an Islamic terrorist state that funds terrorism. It's something that's been going on for decades, if not longer. So I want to go to the first tab here. This is a video from Mark Levin. He posted this on May 27 of this past year. So let's see what Mark has to say about all of this.
And these bastards are the biggest supporters of terrorism in the United States, in the Middle East, and throughout Europe. They've also supported the Taliban, fighting our soldiers. They gave $1.8 billion, the biggest donors to Hamas. Now, other than me and a handful of others, and these fantastic organizations that are digging into the money, digging into these colleges and universities, digging in to what politicians are receiving and companies are receiving from Qatar, which spreads billions and tens of billions of dollars in the West in order to destroy the West. Did you hear a damn thing about terrorism in Qatar? I didn't. Lots going on in the Middle East. There's one thing that did not happen in the Middle East that troubles me and troubles the 9/11 families. Saudi Arabia, there was a lot of pomp and circumstance. You had the monarchy and you had the wealthiest men on the face of the earth running the wealthiest globalist international companies on the face of the earth. I saw that and I said, no, there's globalism. And then they're all talking about isolationism. But that's not even my point. A lot took place with the Saudi crown prince. We're going to sell over $140 billion in military equipment and so forth to the Saudis. That's the greatest sale of American military equipment and know-how in our history. There's talk about a civilian nuclear program, which we will help them build. There's talk about a strategic defense relationship between the two of us. And by the way, the Saudis haven't had to do anything in return, like join the Abraham Accords and even recognize the existence of Israel. And that will bring a lot of money into the United States. I believe that's true. But why didn't we ask the Saudi crown prince to at least apologize to the 9/11 families? The evidence now is indisputable that the Saudis helped push the radical ideology. The Saudis helped directly and indirectly some of the terrorists. That Saudi Arabia effectively had a role in the attack on our country on 9/11. Now, we lost thousands of people. Innocent people going to work in those two towers, innocent people going to the Pentagon, innocent people on all the airplanes who died. All the firefighters, tunnel to towers, this is what they deal with. All the police officers, the security guards. What a horrendous event or events, terrorist events. And Saudi Arabia had a role. I don't allow bygones to be bygones when it comes to life and death. I have a friggin' long memory. Not even an apology? Can you imagine what the 9/11 families are thinking, what they're watching? The Israelis sitting there watching, what the hell's going on there? So that troubled me. And then let's talk about Qatar. Oh, Qatar has spent money on our military base there. Oh, Qatar has given us money for this, and they're giving us a plane, and they have such a great tennis league and golf league, and they gave $5 million to the Medal of Honor Museum. They bought into the Medal of Honor Museum. They own sports clubs in the United States, all throughout Europe. And these bastards are the biggest supporters of terrorism in the United States, in the Middle East, and throughout Europe. They've also supported the Taliban, fighting our soldiers. They gave $1.8 billion, the biggest donors to Hamas. The Hamas billionaire bigwigs got safe haven in Qatar, all through up until January 1st of this year, because
I just want to point that out because that doesn't get repeated enough. Even during the October 7 genocidal massacre in Israel by Hamas terrorists, Hamas leaders were giving the orders from their hotel rooms in Qatar. And that's where all the terrorists hide. Doesn't matter which Islamic terrorist group they are. Qatar is basically like a terrorist Airbnb for all of these Islamic terrorist groups. And, you know, just like Mark said, they've been given billions of dollars to engage in terrorist activities in the Middle East.
because they saw Donald Trump was going to be president. And they were told that's a bad look. Not that they should drop the terrorists. It's a bad look. Now, other than me and a handful of others who have platforms and these fantastic organizations that are digging into the money, digging into these colleges and universities, digging into what politicians are receiving and companies are receiving from Qatar, which spreads billions and tens of billions of dollars in the West in order to destroy the West. Did you hear a damn thing about terrorism in Qatar? I didn't.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.
There you go. So that's a little clip from what Mark Levin said. I wanted to share this next video with you guys. This is from 11 years ago. Okay, so 11 years ago, CNN put out this news clip where they basically were asking, are terrorists raising money in Qatar? So this has been going on for quite a while, guys. This has been going on for quite a while. This is not something new. It's only now that you're seeing the results of that indoctrination that Qatar, has instigated in the West, right? By spending billions of dollars in universities and other cultural centers in Western countries. It's not by accident that American students woke up one day and then started yelling "Death to America" and burning the American flag. This is all part of design, and it's been going on for quite a long time. And so this news article from CNN, guys, this is from 11 years ago. So let's watch this together.
The richest country on earth, sitting on the third largest reserves of natural gas. There are only 250,000 citizens of Qatar, making it home to the world's largest concentration of millionaires. General Jim Jones is a former U.S. National Security Advisor.
Qatar has emerged from, under the previous emir, from being a relatively obscure minor player to a position of preeminence.
Doha's skyline is proof of Qatar's ambition. It's big, it's modern, and it's new. 15 years ago, almost none of this was here. And that growth attracts some of America's biggest companies. Energy giants like Exxon, of course, but also companies like Boeing. The company just sold 50 777s to a consortium, including Qatar Airways.
Martin Reardon opened the first FBI office in Doha. He says it isn't just corporate America benefiting from a relationship with Qatar.
One of the largest air bases that the U.S. has outside the continental United States is here in Doha. It's huge.
It's so huge, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel signed a 10-year agreement to keep U.S. forces here.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Qatar also was a key part of the negotiations with the Taliban to free American POW Bo Bergdahl.
And earlier this week, I was able to personally thank the Emir of Qatar for his leadership in helping us get it done.
The 5 Taliban prisoners from Guantanamo Bay were welcomed in Doha with open arms. A local Qatari told me he has no problem with them.
Did you catch that? So the Taliban prisoners, these terrorists, were welcomed with open arms into Qatar, and Qataris had no issue with that.
قطر مفتوحة للكل وأهلا وسهلا بالجميع حتى الطالبان يعني
This isn't a surprise.
Right? So he's saying Qatar is open to everyone, and then the reporter asks him, even the Taliban, and this guy replies, yeah, even the Taliban. Does that sound like a country or a society that is friendly with the West when they say that our country is open to Islamic terrorists? And again, guys, this is 11 years ago.
Happy to see you, sir. Thank you.
Qatar prides itself on its clout with the U.S. and extremists. This YouTube video is one of several showing fighters in Syria thanking Qatari donors for weapons. The Brothers of Madad al-Sham is the name of a fundraising campaign. It contributes to humanitarian relief in Syria. But this tweet last August from an al-Qaeda-linked militia is one of several from al-Qaeda supporters directing followers to donate to the campaign. Juan Zarante is the former Deputy National Security Advisor for combating terrorism.
what you have is the resurrection of charitable networks that had been suppressed post 9/11, but that are being reborn in the context of Syria.
So how big of a player is Qatar?
Qatar is at the center of this. Qatar has now taken its place in the lead of countries that are supporting Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda-related groups.
Did you catch that, guys? Qatar is literally at the center of this, and yet, just in the last few weeks, we've seen a bunch of American influencers who are going there on paid trips to Qatar, and they're posting about it and saying, "Oh, Qatar is such a wonderful place. Everyone should visit Qatar. It's a beautiful country." Meanwhile, 11 years ago, Americans, who are experts in counterterrorism, were going on CNN and they were saying that Qatar is at the center of the Islamic terrorist movement that we're seeing around the world. People were sounding the alarm at least 11 years ago, if not longer.
In April, a Kuwaiti cleric known to support Al-Qaeda-linked groups tweeted he was heading to Qatar to raise money for jihad. And just last week, the cleric tweeted this poster.
Wait, did I catch that? Someone tweeted that they're going to Qatar to raise money for jihad, right? And then these same Islamic terrorists want to tell you that, oh no, jihad doesn't mean what you think it means. Jihad means internal struggle. Guys, if jihad meant, a personal internal struggle, why the heck would they be tweeting in Arabic saying that they're going to go to Qatar to raise money for jihad? Do you see how you can catch them in their own lies and their own contradictions? Because they always say one thing in English, but then they'll say another thing in Arabic, and they hope that no one catches what they're saying, right? So, yeah, like again, anyone who tries to tell you that, oh, jihad is just an internal struggle, it has nothing to do with murdering infidels. No, that's a lie. Let's listen to this part again, because the guy literally tweets, he says, I'm going to Qatar to raise money for jihad.
Qatar to raise money for jihad. And just last week,
Right,
the cleric
I'll go back a little bit more. Here we go.
tweeted he was heading to Qatar to raise money for jihad. And just last week, the cleric tweeted this poster, which says, our jihad in Syria is financial jihad. It asks for donations in Qatari, Kuwaiti, or Saudi currencies.
Is this something you could conceal and would be very difficult? Because you have probably.
So, I mean, that makes it pretty clear. The kinds of people who go to Qatar and what sort of fundraising activities openly happen in Qatar. Like, they're not even hiding it. They're not even hiding the fact that they're raising money for jihad. And as we all know, jihad is not internal struggle. Jihad is basically Islamic terrorism.
Probably, if you give $1 to if I give $1 to you and you want to help somebody and then you also want to buy a gun, how do I know?
So that is an issue, and that's an issue worldwide when you're talking money laundering with cash.
Saad bin Saad al-Kabi is a fundraiser for the Madad al-Sham campaign in Doha. His current profile on Facebook's WhatsApp, a social media platform, requests donations equal to $1,500 to prepare a fighter by arming, feeding, and treating him. We called al-Kabi when we were in Doha. He wouldn't meet with us, but he denied the poster solicited money for weapons.
He says that there was no mention of weapons.
It's on there right now.
بيقول انه حاليا موجوده على الواتساب بس انه يمكن ايه. He says he has no knowledge of it.
And when we asked why he used a picture of the planes hitting the World Trade Center on 9/11 in a tweet, he replied, the picture is everywhere on the internet.
He says that photo is all over the internet.
Al-Kabi told us we couldn't donate to his campaign right now, but would have to give to another.
Isn't that messed up? So these Islamic terrorists, 11 years ago, were going around raising money for jihad, and they were posting pictures of 9/11. And then they want to tell you that they're your friends. Do you see what these people are like? Do you see how their thinking is? They're literally posting pictures of 9/11, and they're talking about fundraising for jihad. This makes it pretty clear what jihad means to them, wouldn't you think? I mean, it's just so vile and hateful. And when you confront them with it, right? When you confront them, they just say, "Oh, the pictures everywhere on the internet." What does that even mean? What does it even mean when they say the pictures everywhere on the internet?
Picture is everywhere on the internet.
Right. He says that photo is all over the internet.
Al-Kabi told us we couldn't donate to his campaign right now, but would have to give to another charity approved by the Qatari government. He also wouldn't tell us how much money he raised. But in one tweet last summer, he asks Allah to bless the people of Qatar for donating the equivalent of $1.4 million.
Wow.
We don't know where these funds went, but according to the Qatari newspaper Al Arab, at one point, the Madad al-Sham campaign worked with Qatar's Volunteer Work Center to raise money to help Syrian refugees. The work center was supervised by the Qatari government's Ministry of Culture. The minister declined our request for an interview.
So how high up in the government in Qatar does the support for Islamic extremism for these al-Qaeda linked groups go?
Well, these are decisions made at the top. And so Qatar operates as a monarchy. Its officials, its activities follow the orders of the government. And to the extent that there is a policy of supporting extremists in the region, that's a policy that comes from the top.
This is the Taliban office in Doha behind me. Now, it just opened last year.
Did I catch that? The Taliban. Okay, so the Taliban's office in Doha. Again, the Taliban is a listed terrorist entity, and Qatar has an office for the Taliban, and yet Qatar also claims to be an ally of the United States.
Here, and no one responded to our many attempts to reach them. So it may just be a storefront. But the fact is this: Qatar is the only country in the region with a diplomatic Taliban presence. And the emir, the ruler of this country, personally negotiated the release of 5 Taliban prisoners in exchange for American POW Bo Bergdahl.
The emir, Sheikh Tamim, is just 34 years old.
He's the emir. He's very powerful. I mean, as President Truman said, the buck stops there.
The Al Thani family has ruled Qatar for 150 years. They're celebrated internationally, getting top billing on this year's Town and Country Global Influence list, and appearing with the social elite at events like Britain's royal wedding. The emir was unable to meet with us while we were in Doha, but we spoke with his sister, who's on the Time 100 list of most influential people, about the family's massive charity donations.
I remember I was living in America when Katrina happened, and Qatar was one of the first countries to donate $100 million to the U.S. So it's definitely something that's embedded or engraved in our national strategy and development.
That generosity is part of why world leaders eagerly embrace the Qatari royal family.
I just want to welcome the Emir of Qatar and thank him and the people of this country for the friendship that they've shown towards the United States.
General Jim Jones says Qatar has passed some laws against terror finance, but it's not enough.
They probably are a little bit more towards, supporting people that we are a little bit less than thrilled with.
Qatar continues to be a haven for financing extremists.
The Treasury Department says Qatar is one of the most permissive countries in the world when it comes to allowing funding for things like Al-Qaeda. Your family is so powerful here. Do you think there's more that you can do?
Qatar is doing a lot, but the networks that you're discussing requires a group effort, and I think one country, whichever country it is, can't do it alone.
It's no secret the government allows people like Ali Al Nuaimi to live freely in Qatar. Nuaimi was the president of the Qatar Soccer Association, which controversially won the bid for the 2022 World Cup. The United States Treasury designated him a terrorist last year, saying he raised millions to fund terror. Then there's Wagdi Ghonim, a cleric who lived in Orange County, California. The U.S. suspected him of fundraising activities that could support terrorism. Ghonim agreed to leave the U.S. and now lives in Doha, where earlier this year he appeared in a YouTube video soliciting money for Syria with Saad bin Saad al-Kabi. Why does the United States have to accept Qatar providing harbor to people the United States says are terrorists?
Because going beyond that, in the strategic sense, Qatar is a key ally of the United States.
An ally Martin Reardon says the U.S. can't afford to lose.
There is no reality where Qatar is an actual ally of the United States. And we are going to dive into that. But this is wild that you have these American people who are saying that Qatar is an ally of the United States. Nothing could be further from the truth. One of the reasons that you're seeing a lot of this destabilization in the United States, one of the reasons that you're seeing a lot of these young people attacking their own American identity and burning the American flag and, shouting for intifada and jihad is because Qatar has successfully infiltrated the social media network for young people. And they're very popular on TikTok and Instagram, especially through AJ Plus, which is like the younger version of Al Jazeera. And Al Jazeera and AJ Plus are basically just foreign mouthpieces for the Qatari government, and they have been indoctrinating young people in North America for a very, very long time. And that's the reason why you're seeing a lot of them now burning the American flag, even though they themselves are American.
So that maxim that you keep your friends close but your enemies closer, it's very relevant to Qatar.
But will the trade-offs cost America?
There's no question that money going to al-Qaeda affiliates and groups hurts the United States. Money coming out of Qatar not only allows these groups to grow in strength on the battlefield in Syria, but allows them the possibility, the budget, to imagine plotting and to actually attack the United States in the West.
Wow. So that was from 11 years ago, guys. So that was a CNN report from 11 years ago.
Der sich über
I
den
also
Schauschau beschwert hatte, der sich dann eben auch zurückhielt aus Respekt vor seinen Lehrern.
I also want to play now this next video. This is President Trump, and this is what he said 8 years ago. Okay, so let's just listen to what President Trump said 8 years ago about Qatar.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level.
It still is, by the way. It still is one of the biggest funders of terrorism. The two biggest funders of terrorism right now in the world. The first one is Qatar, and the second one is the Islamic Republic occupying my country of Iran. Those are the two biggest sponsors. So it's still happening.
And in the wake of that conference, nations came together and spoke to me about confronting Qatar over its behavior. So we had a decision to make. Do we take the easy road, or do we finally take a hard but necessary action? We have to stop the funding of terrorism. I decided, along with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, our great generals and military people, the time had come to call on Qatar to end its funding. They have to end that funding and its extremist ideology in terms of funding. I want to call on all of the nations to stop immediately supporting terrorism. Stop teaching people to kill other people. Stop filling their minds with hate and intolerance. I won't name other countries, but we are not done solving the problem, but we will solve that problem. have no choice.
Unfortunately, though, unfortunately, Qatar is still funding terrorism. In fact, I think that their funding has, in fact, increased. So it's interesting to me that this is something President Trump said 8 years ago. He acknowledged the fact that Qatar um, is sponsoring Islamic terrorism, and he said that it must stop, and yet it hasn't stopped. It's still continuing, and now, if anything, we're seeing um, American social media influencers who are going to Qatar, and they're coming back and they're praising this terrorist state. Okay, here's another one. Now, this is more recent. So this is a video from 1 month ago. And this was played on Sky News Australia. Guys, I hope that these videos are kind of giving you a little bit of a backgrounder, like a Qatar 101. Obviously, there's a lot of various issues that we can talk about when it comes to Qatar, and we will. I'll host episodes down the road where I speak about, I focus selectively on various issues relating to Qatar. Like I'll have an episode where I speak about how they're influencing the United States, how they're indoctrinating the youth, their ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, all of that. But this episode is kind of like it's like a Qatar 101 to kind of give you guys a little bit of an introduction into who and what Qatar is all about. So that's why I'm keeping it a little bit more broad, a little bit more general. I'm also, playing older videos for you on purpose because those older videos from 8 years ago or 11 years ago, nothing has changed. If anything, the situation has gotten worse when it comes to Qatar. But this is not something new, right? This isn't like new information. This is something that many people, many policymakers have known for a very long time, and yet for some reason they're not really acting on it. And in the meantime, Qatar has gotten even more powerful, even more strong. My understanding is they own like half of London at this point. So, yeah, like there's a very, very big Islamic terrorist problem that's being funded by Qatar.
Catch up again with Jonathan Spire from the Middle East Forum. He's joined us live from Jerusalem. Good to talk to you, Jonathan. Just momentous days yesterday, and naturally enough,
I know Jonathan. I actually I had dinner with Jonathan when I was visiting Israel last year. He's a great guy.
a lot of focus on what happens next. But I want to get your thoughts again, because you were one of the first people to point out that attack by Israel on the Hamas leadership in Qatar was ground shaking. Not because it necessarily because it meant that Hamas leaders couldn't operate safely anywhere, but because it forced Qatar to effectively choose a side. Tell us how that has affected what we've seen in the last 48 hours, that alongside the knocking out of Iran's nuclear and missile weapons facilities.
Yeah, I think, Chris, with regard to Qatar, as I indeed have pointed out, Qatar has been playing a very dangerous double game, not only regarding Israel, but regarding the Middle East as a whole, where it backs terror organizations, insurgent organizations, and then it offers the opponents of those organizations a kind of mediation, which in the end ends up benefiting the insurgent organizations.
So guys, that's really important. That's really critical. And we'll definitely talk about that as well and expand upon that. But all of these Islamic terrorist groups that are being funded by Qatar, it's wild to me. Let me put it this way. It's absolutely wild to me. And I'm looking at the camera here for this one. It is insane to me that Qatar literally funds Islamic terrorist groups that go and engage in terrorist activities around the world. They take hostages. These Islamic terrorist groups find safety and shelter in Qatar. And then Qatar comes and acts like some sort of mediator between these Islamic groups that Qatar itself is funding. and a mediator to the West. And I don't know why Western politicians aren't waking up to this and calling it out for what it is. Like this is the equivalent. And I just made a video about this, one of my, Iranian here pro tip videos. This is like the equivalent of your neighbor setting your house on fire and then coming with a bucket of water and charging you to put out the fire. That's exactly what Qatar is doing here. So it's insane to me that this is even being allowed to go on, and that Qatar is even being given the opportunity to be a mediator when everyone knows that all these Islamic terrorist groups are backed and funded by Qatar, and they have shelter and refuge in Qatar.
Themselves. It did this with the Taliban. It did it with Jabhat al-Nusra, an Islamist group in Syria. It's done it with Hamas. And I do think that Israel's raid on Hamas leadership in Doha did sort of put the Qataris on notice that that's not infinitely sustainable, that, forces are noticing this and that Qatar will pay a certain price for it. I'm not sure the extent to which that contributed to the eventual deal. I do think it was a very important step to have taken, and I hope there'll be further steps towards removing that possibility of Qatar's strategy. Regarding the Iranians, yeah, it's a very central point. I think we mustn't forget this wasn't a one-front war between Israel and Hamas. It was at one time, in the middle of 2024 at its height, a seven-front war between Israel and a network of proxy Islamist organizations headed by Islamic Republic of Iran, or armed and made and facilitated by Islamic Republic of Iran itself. That's the war that's been fought. At the end of it, and we hope it has now ended yesterday, the Iran-led regional axis is vastly weaker than it was 2 years ago. And that, to my view at least, is the central achievement of the war that Israel's been engaged in over the last 2 years.
And that's also central, of course, in getting more Arab support from the Sunni Arab world, where they can try and take advantage of this period when Iran, the key Shia force, is on the back foot or disabled to some degree. I just want to get your thoughts before we go. We've got a crowded program tonight, Jonathan, but we know there are going to be many hurdles. But already with the peace deal, the dead hostages are not being returned in numbers. They were promised 28 bodies. Only 4 have been handed over. Also, Hamas are executing more so-called collaborators in Gaza. How worried should we be about these developments on the ground right now?
I think we should be concerned. I mean, as we know, President Trump had his 20-point plan. We've just had the first phase. I'm very skeptical as to whether the subsequent phases will indeed be correctly or properly carried out. The fact is that Hamas is still there, as we've seen in recent days. It started executing so-called collaborators as soon as Israel pulled back from territory. There are a number of, unfortunately, bodies of hostages which have not yet been returned. Hamas claims they can't locate them. That very dangerous Islamist actor has been weakened in Gaza. It has not yet been completely destroyed. It's going to continue doing what we know it does. So I think there's, much more tension to come. At the end of the day, I do hope we can avoid a situation in which we've got, 4 maneuvering divisions inside the Gaza Strip. So yes, conflict and tension still to come. Hopefully, however, large-scale war, absent at least another black swan event, can be avoided in the period ahead.
Indeed. Thanks so much for joining us, Jonathan. Jonathan Spire there, Middle East expert, live from Jerusalem.
So there we go. A little bit of an info more recently, but I found a very, very interesting interview, and we hear a lot about, Qatar being a terrorist state and, having the monarchy, which is just controlling everything and funding terrorism. We never really hear from opposition Qatari forces. And Erin Milan, if you don't follow her on YouTube, make sure that you go and give her a follow. She does fantastic work. She actually just put out a video about 17 hours ago, so less than 24 hours ago. And she actually interviewed the Qatari opposition leader. Now, I'm not very familiar with the Qatari opposition leader. I mean, I always assumed that there would be maybe some sort of opposition, but you never really hear about them, or you never really hear them in the news. They're never really active. Um, and so when I came across this was very, very interesting to me. So the description reads, in a historic first, Qatari opposition leader Khalid al-Hayl sits down with Aaron Milan for his first ever English television interview, breaking his silence on the regime he says has tortured dissidents, funded extremists, manipulated the West, and built its global power on deception. For years, most of the world never knew Qatar had an opposition movement at all. That's true. I mean, I didn't even know that Qatar had an opposition movement. According to Al Hayl, that was by design. And that's really interesting because, for me as an Iranian, and I'm part of the Iranian opposition movement against the Islamic Republic, the Islamic Republic does everything and anything they can to, of course, silence our voices, whether Iranians are in Iran or whether we're outside of Iran. Now, we have been very good, especially in the last few years, at raising awareness and combating the propaganda of the terrorist Islamic Republic. But again, that's because of social media and our ability to gather together and speak out. And of course, I think the other thing as well is that there are 80 million Iranians who are opposed to the Islamic Republic. So there's just a greater number of us. Whereas when you look at Qatar, there's only 300,000 Qataris in the entire world. So I'm assuming their opposition movement is probably much, much smaller because I've never heard of a Qatari opposition movement. In this unprecedented conversation, he reveals why he believes the current regime's expiry date is coming, how he says Qatar built influence by playing arsonist and firefighter. Guys, isn't that the example that I gave earlier? Like I basically said what Qatar is doing is they're basically like setting your house on fire and then they're coming with a bucket of water and offering to put out the fire, right? His claim that the regime's existence is based on terrorism, his torture, imprisonment, and escape from Doha, his warning to Western influencers and political figures, and his promise no Hamas, no Muslim Brotherhood, no extremists in Qatar. This interview is already making waves, and the implications for the Middle East, the West, and global security are enormous. So we're going to watch this interview because it seems like this gentleman, Khalid al-Hayl, he's about to do a lot of whistleblowing and exposing of not just Qatar, but how Qatar funds Islamic terrorism and extremism in the Middle East and around the world. So let's get started.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to this very special edition of the Erin Molan Show. We have an absolute cracker for you. This could not wait. My next guest, if he succeeds in what he's setting out to do, he will change the world in the most extraordinary way. He is the Qatari opposition leader. You probably haven't heard of that position, let alone the person. There's a reason. He's the head of the Democratic Party. He wants to end the terrorist state. And he says that time is coming, and it's coming quickly. His name is Sheikh Khalid al-Hayl. He's currently in exile in the UK. The current regime, well, they want him dead for obvious reasons. He doesn't just talk about what he hopes for the nation of Qatar. He helps to expose the rot, the decay, the evil that exists within. He has a lot to say about the Muslim Brotherhood, about those in America taking money from Qatar, about influencers, and about what is at stake here. It is a must watch. It is a must listen. And please share far and wide.
This is also his first in English interview. So we thank him so much for choosing the Erin Molan Show to share his story. Khalid, thank you so very much for A, coming on my show, and B, for having the courage to speak and for giving us your first in English television interview. It's a great honor to have you.
It's my pleasure being here today. It's very important to be somewhere where we can speak honestly about Qatar, because honesty is something they struggle with. I'm here today to speak about Qatar, not the polished image they produce to the world.
You are the leader.
Wow. Okay, I feel like this is going to be a very, very interesting and revealing interview. So get settled in, guys. It's about 30 minutes long.
Of the Qatari opposition party. I would hazard a guess most people listening have never heard of such a thing, did not realize it existed. And that is for good reason, because the powers that be in Qatar don't want the world to know that you exist.
Our movement started in 2010 within Qatar, and it's been developing a bit until 2014, where the first youth movement conference being held in Egypt. And in that time, we were talking about the support of the Muslim Brotherhood regime that collapsed in Egypt in that time. Our movement was based off anti-Muslim Brotherhood and Islamist ideologists, which was running the country in that time. And 2017, I held an international conference, which been attacked very strongly by Al Jazeera and Qatar media. They were hacking us. They were chasing us. They started to undermine us in the media. A lot of people that affiliate.
Yeah, that's because Al Jazeera is the state-sponsored mouthpiece of Qatar. Al Jazeera will never ever criticize Qatar. They're basically owned by the monarchy, right? So yeah, Al Jazeera will go after anyone that challenges or threatens Qatar. Al Jazeera is even attacking the United Arab Emirates right now because the UAE is currently combating the Muslim Brotherhood, something that this gentleman here mentioned as well.
Affiliated with the Qatari opposition. They are banned from traveling from Doha. Those who's outside the country, they have a genuine fear of prosecution. They cannot come back to the country. 2013, Tamim gave some promises that he will solve these issues. And he personally gave me a call and told me, you can come back to Doha, it will be safe, everything will be fine. And it was an absolutely nightmare for me. I went back to Doha. I've been tortured. I've been in the high security intelligence prison for no reason. They started to accuse me of some lies. I managed to run from the country. I didn't leave the country legally, but I managed to run outside the country because I had some influence within the regime in that time. So I've left Qatar and I established the movement in that time, where a lot of people joined the movement. If you are aware, in 2017, 18, 19, there were a conflict between Qatar and the GCC countries. And I had a lot of my people publicly criticizing the regime of Qatar, but unfortunately Qatar was hunting them, and that's why the way we operate now is trying to minimize the presence of the locals on TV or on any media outlets, just to protect them, because Qatar have enormous money and access to funds. And the way they operate is, it's like a criminal organization, just hunting and undermining people. The story they're putting to the world, we don't have a Qatari opposition front. All what we have is people that support our king, the King of Kings, as I explained to you, the Qatari regime is an absolute monarchy system that's run by a childish regime and led by the boy king of Qatar, which loved to be worshipped and endorsed.
Talk to me about why this regime is not legitimate, why they are not what they paint themselves to be in the Western world. And I use the example of the latest peace deal where they painted themselves as these peacemakers that were there to help when they themselves funded the October 7 attacks. They harbored the leaders of Hamas, yet they pretend to be the ones that care deeply about trying to create peace in a region where they are on the other side creating all the chaos.
Let me ask you a question. If there were no Qatar or there were no Hamas, let's say, will Qatar has any role in any mediation?
No.
The same thing happened with Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and every single terrorist front. Syria, for example. The world was accusing Qatar of funding terrorism in that time, which is Al-Nusra Front. And what happened after that? Qatar promoting them and putting them on the table of Trump. So it's not an accusation, it's a factual information. The Qatari regime existence is based on terrorism. If there is not existing, the Qatari regime is not there. There's no mediation. Let me explain to you how they think. 2010, I was sitting with Tamim and his brother in that time. And one of our drivers from Eritrea, and I want to ask you a question. You ever heard of Djibouti and Eritrea conflict?
No.
No. Who on earth care about that? So basically, let me explain to you how Tamim think. We were sitting, Tamim and his brother, and one of the drivers from Eritrea, and he was explaining that they have a conflict, border conflict between Djibouti and Eritrea. Tamim jumped, said, oh, we can solve it. We can solve the problem. He was in that time the crown prince of Qatar. Now Hamas, they saw, okay, so the West, they're giving this case importance. So we have to be there. Every single relationship Qatar had before with any regime, like from Gaddafi regime, Saddam Hussein regime, they just betrayed them. They betrayed them. They betrayed that regimes. Even Gaddafi regime, they were in a strong relationship with them. They were sitting in secret tables. They were making conspiracy against the other GCC countries, and I exposed them. I am the one who leaked the record of Gaddafi, between Gaddafi and the leaders of Qatar. And it's made a big issue in the Middle East in that time. And it was the base of the main conflict in 2014. People forgot. Yes, we played a big role in exposing the Qatari regime. It's in all Arab media mainstreams. You can go there and check that records and see how they operate.
Okay, I want to find this recording. I just looked it up. Okay. So apparently, like I literally just searched leaked recording between Gaddafi and Qatar, and this showed up. So let's see what this guy's talking about with this leaked recording. So he's saying we have connections with all the opposition. Again, we are a country that caused Saudi Arabia a lot of trouble. If Saudi Arabia is Wahhabi, so is Qatar. Then why does Qatar have freedom of press and women can vote? Even their sheikh is my 16th great grandfather, and the US media addressed this topic many times. If Americans succeed in Iraq, Saudi Arabia will become next. Even Saad al-Faqih was hosted multiple times on Al Jazeera to comment. If you were to live 12 more years, his family will vanish. I will remind you. So it seems like Gaddafi is like plotting with Qatar behind Saudi Arabia's back. Gaddafi used to be the dictator in Libya before he was overthrown. They can't make decisions. There's a lot of trouble between Sultan. Oh, wow. Look at this. So he says those who coordinate with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan have no dignity, especially Egypt. Wow. It's like they're like plotting behind each other's backs. But I mean, this is how dictators operate, right? Like this is how dictators are. They're always like they're constantly plotting and scheming. You can't trust any of them for any reason, right? I swear to Muammar, they are doomed. They have no power to make decisions. Oh, Egypt and Saudi. Okay, so this is Gaddafi saying Egypt and Saudi Arabia are the two primary countries that have brought disgrace to the Arabs. So he's saying that to Qatar. Wow.
في عدد من المساجد يتجمعون فيها الأعداد تزيد هذه أكيد يعني.
This is for certain. We don't pacify the way you think. We started Al Hawar channel in London. We are the ones feeding their internal disagreements stops them from controlling the kingdom. Trust me. We have to create this axis and support the internal movements because it's in our interest to support these movements quietly. It's only a matter of time. As I told you, if we live for 12 more years, I highly doubt the Saudi royal family will be okay. So basically, you guys can go and look this up after, but this looks like this is a leaked audio call between Gaddafi, who was a dictator in Libya, and then Qatar, the former emir of Qatar, and apparently they were plotting to overthrow the Saudi royal family. Okay, so this is the leaked audio that this gentleman is referring to here. Okay, so now we know which leaked audio it is that he's talking about.
Qatar. And it's made a big issue in the Middle East in that time, and it was betrayed them. They betrayed them. They betrayed that regimes. Even Gaddafi regime. They were in a strong relationship with them. They were sitting in secret tables. They were making conspiracy against the other GCC countries. And I exposed.
So that when he's talking about the conspiracy, right? So that was the leaked audio there where Qatar. So basically, what this gentleman is saying is Qatar, no matter who they deal with, they will ultimately betray them. And so he just gave the example of Gaddafi. He's saying that, listen, even Gaddafi and them, they were like, having these conversations behind the scenes, these secret conversations, plotting to like overthrow the Saudi royal family, and Qatar even betrayed them. And this is the guy that leaked the audio.
Exposed them. I am the one who leaked the record of Gaddafi, between Gaddafi and the leaders of Qatar. And it's made a big issue in the Middle East in that time. And it was the base of the main conflict in 2014. People forgot. Yes, we played a big role in exposing the Qatari regime. It's in all Arab media mainstreams. You can go there and check that records and see how they operate. So, yes, we did achievements in exposing the regime of Qatar, but they are trying to undermine us in every single movement. They are smart. They're spending their money to do one thing. Example, in the Western America, I was shocked to know a few days ago that they are promoting to some people in America that I am a front for the Qatari regime without saying it. They pay people to say, oh, this guy is being created by the Qatari regime to go and just pretend there is an opposition of Qatar. And that's an absolute bullshit. What they're trying to do is in undermining every single opposition they face. They are hacking people. They are terrorizing people. Even Karim Khan's story, you've seen it in the Karim Khan, the judge in the criminal court. They hacked him. They hacked me. They hacked a lot of their rebels. They have no morals and no ethics.
So Khalid, you're preaching to the converted with me. I get it entirely. These are the same people, again, who fund terrorism and harbor terrorists. So you don't need to convince me that they are evil. I believe that wholeheartedly. How does it change? And talk to me about the people on the ground in Doha. You look at the Iranian regime, over 80% minimum despise that illegal regime. They are not the legitimate leaders of Iran. Is it a similar situation in Qatar? Do the majority of people want there to be democracy? Do they want their leaders harboring terrorists?
Let me explain to you the way Qatar operates before we jump into that moment. So Qatar has something called original Qataris and the Qataris, the migrant Qataris who came recently, like 20, 30 years ago. So Qatar, to make balance, to control the country, they replaced the original people with people with outsiders. And what they've done, when the election happened in Qatar, the first democratic election 2021, which they promised from 2013, the majority of the seats was so the whole election was based on the original Qataris. They excluded the other people. So when that happened, the majority of the seats gone to the people that oppose the Qatari regime and the Qatari mentality. And what happened after? They canceled the election. They canceled the whole election. Even in the army of Qatar, they intentionally mixing foreigners with the locals because they know for a fact that the Qatari people, the original Qatari people, they condemn the Qatari government action.
Wow. That really resonates with me as an Iranian, what he said, where he's saying that the Qatari regime is bringing in like non-Qataris and giving them citizenships and, making them into Qataris because not enough Qataris support the regime. That's the exact same thing that the terrorist Islamic Republic is doing in Iran because there are not enough Iranians who support them. And so they have to bring in outsiders, usually from like Afghanistan or Pakistan or Lebanon or, other, even like, Gaza, Syria, Iraq, even Nigeria sometimes. They'll bring these foreigners in and, they will live in Iran and then they work with the Islamic Republic to monitor the population, keep the population subdued, and they will go after Iranians when Iranians rise up as well. So it's very interesting to see him talking about how this same tactic is also being utilized by the Qataris in order to suppress and subdue the Qatari population. And I 100% believe him and what he's saying because we Iranians have been experiencing the exact same thing for the last 47 years since the Islamic Republic took over in 1979. So that's not far-fetched, guys. That is 100%, 100% I believe him because the Islamic Republic is doing the same thing in Iran. So it seems like these terrorist regimes are all, using the same playbook.
Actions. They are acting solely like it's an absolute monarchy system. So the guy, he decides what's happened. He will decide what's coming up next. The Qatari people are not Muslim Brotherhood. We are not Muslim Brotherhood. We are not Islamists. We are not extremists. It's the regime and their affiliates. That's the problem. So if you talk about legitimacy, let me come back to you and say, my promise to the world, this regime will not stand for long. This regime has an expiry date. They don't know what's coming toward them. They think everything is fine. Renting loyalty and renting influence is temporary. It's for today, tomorrow, and after tomorrow. But things are changing. The world is changing. Money will buy silence for a short period of time. But to stop a terrorist regime like the Qatari regime, you have to go to the source of the issue. They have an enormous access to money, and that's the problem. So if you stop that, you stop terrorism in the world, and it should be controlled. What people need to understand that there is the other side, there is the other voice inside the country. We cannot talk. I am here talking because I am in a different country, and I can say what I want to say. The Qatari regime, they terrorizing the people. The former Minister of Justice in Qatar is banned from traveling from Doha. He cannot say anything. Most of the people in Qatar, the reformists, they cannot travel outside Doha. Is that a democratic regime? Is that the regime that the West want to put their hand with? They terrorizing people, putting them in jail for a poetry. One person being jailed for 15 years. And now when he left the country. Is that possible?
That's the same thing that happens in occupied Iran, guys. We have a lot of actors and poets and writers and journalists and university students, environmentalists who are jailed for the crime of, making a movie or writing a poem or saying something on live TV. It is very, very common amongst these autocratic dictatorships.
Khalid, how does it change? You say that change is coming and they don't know it yet. Tell me how it changes.
We are making the change. We starting now to make the change. We will make a big difference. Our promise to the nation of Qatar that this regime will collapse, will change. The main issue the West is facing now, they fear that a new regime that comes to Doha might have a conflict with them. It's the opposite. We are the solution. We have no affiliation with extremist or Islamist.
So tell me, let me get this from you now. You would end every cent were you to somehow form government in Qatar, to go in and lead. Under your leadership, there would not be a cent going to Muslim Brotherhood or any Islamic extremist group, any extremist group at all. Is that what you promise?
What I promise to the world, I am not acting alone. So Qatar is a monarchy system. We appreciate that and we respect that as Qataris. We have a group from the royal family of Qatar who believe exactly what we say. For the sake of the stability of the nation, we are leading a movement now that lead to the change of what's happening in Qatar. It's the same existing of the US military base in Doha. Nothing will be changed. The only thing will be changed is that there is no more Hamas in Doha. There is no more Muslim Brotherhood. There is no more extremists in Qatar. So our promise to the world that we will be the best solution for the West, and our money will be focused on developing our own people. We were not going to spend our money anymore to support Hamas or to support these terrorist organizations. Our movement is a peaceful movement. We are not terrorists, but we have now changed our plans. Before we thought that it might be a reform with the Qatari regime and negotiations, but it's all bullshit. Sorry to say that. Because
no, I'm Australian. You can swear at any time.
But I'm not swearing, but this guy, the king boy of Qatar, is an absolute idiot. There is no way for a compromise solution with these people. They want to convince the world that the Muslim Brotherhood is not danger. Hamas is not danger. They are part of the solution, which is complete.
You know what? That's so true, and that's why you're seeing all these young people who have consumed um, Al Jazeera media and Press TV media and other Islamist media, and these are people who 2 years ago, before the October 7 genocidal massacre in Israel, they wouldn't know the difference between Hamas and Hummus. And now all of a sudden they're going out there and, they're calling Hamas freedom fighters and resistance. And, nothing is further from the truth, right? I mean, these are Islamic terrorists. We all know they're Islamic terrorists. Those of us who are from the Middle East know that they're Islamic terrorists. And yet, you have these uneducated young people who have been so indoctrinated by the ideology that Qatar has been pushing out there, whether it's through university institutions, whether it's through academics, whether it's through the Doha Forum, which is happening right now, right? Like this Doha Forum is another way for them to normalize Islamic terrorism by giving it some sort of legitimacy and giving it, making it like part of the discourse when it should not and should never be part of the discourse. And yeah, like these are not freedom fighters. These are Islamic terrorists.
Completely wrong. It's an absolutely mistake. It's a historic mistake. Trump, we love him. I personally like Trump. My problem with Trump now is that you cannot give them access to your own national security matter. They are a threat.
Yeah.
They are a threat to the national security. They have the money to manipulate people. They are, can you believe that they are buying Newsmax? They are buying some outlets that pro-Trump. They are changing the map. They want legitimacy. So when they do something in the future, and I'm telling you, Hamas' story will not end. Qatar wants Hamas to be there. If Hamas will go, another front will be created, similar to Hamas. Libya is the same issue happening to Libya. Thanks to God, there is someone called Haftar who's fighting the Muslim Brotherhood, fighting Islamists, and he's doing it every single day. Qatari regime, every single day, funding the opposition, the militias, the Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood fronts. And that's a danger. Look what's happening in Canada. Example, Khalid al-Gazzaz, coming from Egypt, is a terrorist guy from Egypt. He went to Canada and now he's planning to be an MP.
Yeah, we definitely have a terrorist problem in Canada, and we do have a Muslim Brotherhood problem in Canada. And I was a Canadian politician for 7 years in the Ontario legislature. And when I started calling it out, especially after October 7, I was targeted by the National Council of Canadian Muslims, which has ties to CARE International, or CARE America, CARE International, and CARE International has ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. They accused me of Islamophobia for the crime of speaking out against Islamic terrorism. So yeah, Canada is definitely, it's pretty bad here. It's pretty bad. Canada has become a hotbed for Islamic terrorists. And yeah, I mean, if they can accuse someone like me, I was born in Iran and have a lot of experience with Islamic terrorism. My country is occupied by an Islamic dictatorship. If they can accuse me of Islamophobia, they can accuse anyone of Islamophobia. And unfortunately, Canadian politicians are incredibly spineless, and they would rather cater to the votes and the fundraising than to doing the right thing. So I'm glad that he brought up Canada, because we all know Canada is pretty much one of the worst places when it comes to Islamic terrorism. Everyone knows it, and even this guy, this Qatari guy, is pointing it out.
It's a danger to the West. It's dangerous.
Yeah,
all Qatari money.
We did an episode specifically on that and the presence of the Muslim Brotherhood in Canada, and you're absolutely right. It's terrifying. I want to ask you about.
Ooh, we should watch that after. I should find that episode, and we should definitely watch that one because I'm always interested to know what other people think about the Muslim Brotherhood in Canada because it is a very big problem here.
About you've referenced the Emir a couple of times. His mother, Motsa, she purports to be a humanitarian almost, someone who hosts, big glamorous events, and she is, she leads big educational institutes and boards and that kind of thing. What is her role in all of this? And one quick look at her social media feeds, and you see that she was posting about Yahya Sinwar, about the sadness of his demise, and he was, for those who aren't aware, I'm sure most of you are, the architect of October 7. How are they pretending to be something they are not?
Sheikha Moza, she's okay. Let me first give me some context about who Sheikha Moza. She's the daughter of the leader of Qatari opposition in the 60s. And then they made a political marriage. And that's where the power become between them and the current Al-Thanis. So Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad, son of Sheikh Moza, who came from a good background. She's very well educated, though. She's very well educated. But the issue we have now, the educational system they create in Doha, the Qatar Foundation, the people she work with, the people they work with, is all have an Islamist ideology. They are all part of the problem. Sheikh Moza, she have a big influence on her own son. So Tamim, when his mom told him that he have to take the power from his dad because she feared that his elder brother from another wife could take the power in Qatar, she forced Hamad bin Khalifa and they locked him in the toilet. The same thing he did to his own dad. He'd been locked to the toilet as well. So he'd been locked in the toilet, he'd been forced to resign, and he resigned and gave the power to his own son. Because in that time they had a big conflict with Saudi Arabia as well, where they were making some conspiracy about killing the king of Saudi Arabia, and it's been exposed. And that's exactly what they do all their life. They call them HBJ, HBK, Tamim is just a continuation for the previous regime of Qatar. Give me one achievement Tamim bin Hamad did and since he became to the power. I will tell you, from 2013 until now. 2013, accusation of publicly funding the Muslim Brotherhood fronts. 2014, the conflict with Saudi Arabia and all the GCC countries. Then he signed the Al-Ula agreement. He sat in the table and signed. 3 weeks after that, the opposite happened. And the conflict started again. Another conflict ended in 2021, where another agreement signed. Anything changed? No. Hamas is there. Al Jazeera is there. The terrorist fronts are there. They keep funding the opposition in all those countries. They pretend to be dumb. Example, very recent example. The Prime Minister of Qatar was in America, in New York, during the campaign of Mamdani. He pretended to be dumb. They asked him in the conference, so you are here just because of the election? Oh, is it today? I don't know. We are just being sandwiched. We are very good people. We don't know nothing. No, you know exactly what's going on. You know what's happening. You know that you've been funding his mom for many years. Every single Qatari person knows that they've been funded by Qatar. But the way they are funded, it's not publicly known for people to accuse them because they have their own way. They manage the network of influence, how to pay people. I mean,
so on that, Khalid, I want to ask you. You mentioned people, influence, and being paid. There's just been a whole group of American conservative influencers who have gone to Qatar, who were hosted by Qatar, who are suddenly posting images on their social media. These again are conservative American influencers talking about how amazing it is.
Yeah, let me bring one up just to show you guys. let me go to X here so that you guys can see what's going on. Let me go to my profile. I'll find one here for you. Like, it's the most random thing. It's really the most random thing. Like, no one speaks about Qatar unless they're like paid by, like, if you're not Qatari, you don't speak about Qatar unless you're paid by Qatar, right? It's just the reality here. Where was this? Let me find it. Oh, I've posted a lot on X in the last few days. Here we go. Okay. So like here's this one random guy. Okay, so he's like an American influencer. His name is Rob Smith. Apparently, like he's gay as well. Like he's homosexual, and homosexuality is actually banned in Qatar. Okay, like it's because it's governed by strict Islamic Sharia law. So homosexuality is banned. So I mean, homosexuals aren't even safe in Qatar anyway. And then he just, so this is him, right? And then here he's like on like some random balcony, and I don't know, it looks like a parking lot behind him or something, right? Like this is I mean, I don't even know what this is. It's just like a random park and like a road or something. And then he like posts this, review like, my first trip to Qatar has been eye-opening. It's a very different Middle East than I expected. Blah 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 blah. Like he just goes on this like raving review about Qatar, right? Never talks about the fact that it's an Islamic Sharia state that basically does not provide any, doesn't give any rights to women or homosexuals. Never talk or non-Muslims. Never talks about how Qatar is literally built on slave labor. Never talks about how Qatar hosts Islamic terrorist groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, Taliban, Al-Shabaab, all these people. And yeah, like he was basically called out for that. No one talks, and I put this out there. I said no one talks positively about Qatar unless they've been paid by Qatar. Qatar supports Hamas, funds the Muslim Brotherhood, and contributes to radicalizing Western youth through AJ+. They also engage in modern day slavery, sex trafficking, and murdering LGBTQ. This is crazy. So this one American influencer, and then there's like another one, right? This Emily Saves America. Literally as soon as, so she went to Qatar as well. Let me find this picture. I think she was community noted. Here we go. So literally, so you can tell it's the exact same balcony as Rob Smith, except it's just like a different angle, right? So here you can see like the car, I don't know, like the random blocks or whatever, and then there's like a parking lot behind her, and then just like a bunch of random buildings and some grass. And then she's like, so beautiful, can't wait to come back, right? And then she was community noted for this. This post was written after taking a paid trip to Qatar and agreeing to conditions of the trip, which are not public. It is entirely possible the wording of this post was dictated in part or wholly by those who sponsored this trip. But again, like no one just goes to Qatar and then posts like a random photo there of like a parking lot, and they're like, oh, it's so beautiful, I can't wait to come back, right? It's just the most ridiculous thing. And then literally like right on cue, like one day later, she started attacking people who are she started attacking people who are calling out anti-Semites and Jew haters. And she's like, this is just so embarrassing to post. No wonder people are so over this. And then of course, like, she's being called out. So even I was like, she should change her name to Emily Saves Qatar instead of Emily Saves America. But Qatar is not your friend or ally. Qatar is not at all your friend. And so the fact that this gentleman here, the Qatari opposition, right, he's going to speak out about this now. So when Aaron's speaking about those influencers who recently traveled to Qatar, that's who she's referring to. Like all these influencers who went, and they did not call out the fact that Qatar funds Islamic terrorism. They didn't call out the fact that Qatar is basically built on slave labor. They didn't call out the fact that women, minorities, religious minorities, and homosexuals have no rights in Qatar. They didn't call out any of that. It's just these like glowing reviews of Qatar, which makes no sense because Qatar literally has nothing. Like there's nothing in Qatar to go and visit. Like at least if you go to like the UAE, the UAE, at least they've built up the cities and you have like nice buildings and different things like that. But Qatar has literally nothing. Anyway, so now let's continue. So now you know what Erin Milan here is referring to when she's talking about the conservative influencers who recently went to Qatar.
How to pay people. I mean,
so on that, Khalid, I want to ask you. You mentioned people, influence, and being paid. There's just been a whole group of American conservative influencers who have gone to Qatar, who were hosted by Qatar, who are suddenly posting images on their social media. These again are conservative American influencers talking about how amazing it is.
Listen, I've seen some videos. Even some people say, "Oh, there is a nightclub there. Oh, there is a party there." I mean,
what do they go and do a tour? Oh, this is where the Qatari leaders celebrated when children were slaughtered on October 7. Is that part of this influence tour?
I agree with you. This is the exact word that they should understand. What they're doing now, what I say, is a rented loyalty for a period of time. They will realize later they are not changing. The Qatar regime is not changing. They will never change. They don't know what's coming their way. I'm telling you. So I'm warning every single person taking money from Qatar, shaking their hands with the regime of Qatar. In the near future, you will gonna face a problem. Remember what happened to Gaddafi regime, and every single regime or influencer received money from them. The same thing will happen in Qatar. That's the exact thing will gonna happen. Be careful, because what's coming next is not for anyone to either deny or can stop, because it's coming within, and Americans will never stop such movement for one reason. Americans, they signed to protect Qatar, not the regime of Qatar, not Tamim bin Hamad. Tamim has a short expiry date and it will be gone very soon. They don't know anything. So I'm warning you not to put your hand with them, not to promote them. If you are in Doha now, you want to promote something, you want to show that you are decent, fine. Go. Osama bin Laden's son lives in Qatar. Go show Osama bin Laden's son. Show Hamas leaders who live in Qatar. Show the Muslim Brotherhood's leaders who live in Qatar, how they live in a very lavish lifestyle. Go there and shoot pictures with them. That's what you need to do.
Talk to me about someone like Tucker Carlson, who seems to have changed his tune entirely when it comes to Qatar. And look,
And Tucker is in Doha right now, having fun in Qatar with Islamic terrorists.
Don't know what his arrangements are. I haven't seen any evidence of anything, but there has been a significant change of tune from him when it comes to his narrative and his coverage of Qatar.
There is an investigation is going on now by Khalid Al-Hilal Institute, and there's I can't say much about it, but I've been investigating this matter for a very long time. And it was a bit of a strange thing for me and for many others. But when you start linking things together and the way he shifted and the timeline, you will understand that Qatar has a big hand on it. And I definitely, I'm very certain, without the core evidence, let's say, but I'm certain.
And we make that very clear. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes,
Speculation.
but I am certainly sure that they have a hand somehow on that. Because if there were no financial benefit for Tucker Carlson, there wouldn't be a big shift like you saw now. So the issue is he's not only pro-Trump, but he was on the right camp. Qatar recently shifted a lot of people from the right camp to their own camp. And in the near future, we will see what exactly they've been doing. And I'm sure I can't say much, but there is certain things is happening that it will be revealed soon to the world. I'm very sure about that.
I look forward to all of that coming out.
That's really interesting. Given that this is the guy who leaked the secret conversation between Gaddafi and Qatar about how they were conspiring to overthrow the Saudi royal family, I kind of believe him. I believe him. I do feel like he's got something in the works, and maybe part of the reason that he is now doing his first interview in English is because maybe he's almost ready to put this information out there, right? I mean, I mean, this is the first time I've heard of him, and the first English interview he's done. But we've been fact checking, and the fact that he's the one who leaked that secret audio between Gaddafi and Qatar makes me think that maybe he's got a few things up his sleeve. So yeah, I'd be very interested to see what he comes up with and what he says in the future. So we need to be monitoring this person. I'm going to see if he has like social media accounts, like an X or X account or something. I should try to give him a follow.
We've got to wrap up, but I want to ask you, is there a target on your head? Does the Qatari regime want to get rid of you entirely?
Definitely. They are defamating my character for many years. And they've been attacking me in different ways. In the Arab media, they say he's a pro-Israel puppet. He's a propaganda machine for Israel.
Oh my gosh, that's exactly what I get called all the time. So it's good to know that the accusations are the same everywhere, and they really need to come up with new material. Like these Islamists and these jihadis, they really need to come up with new material, because when they start accusing all of us of being pro-Israeli Zionists and Zio puppets or whatever, it's just like, at this point, whenever someone accuses me of that, I'm just like, all right, whatever, let's move on. Like, you clearly have no brain cells.
Israel. For example, within Qatari people, this guy's a puppet for Saudi Arabia or the UAE. In the West, in America, they pay people to say, they are part of our regime, but say it indirectly. So to undermine him and to make people to fear to deal with them. So this is the way they do. But we know all these tactics. It's old story. It's nothing new. We will fight it. This is my first English interview. And I'm sure from now is a new start for us, is a new start for me. We are the future, not them. And I'm very confident about that. We are the future. We are the modern state. We are the people of our own nation. We love our country. It's not an absolute monarchy system. It's a constitutional monarchy system that will run the country. It's not Tamim himself anymore. It's not Hamas leader. It's not the people who support the Islamist ideology. No, it's the people of the country. It's the national interest of the country. It's our word. It's us. It's we as Qatari nationals.
Khalid, as someone who believes in the complete opposite of what that regime currently promotes, I hope and pray you are right. I hope and pray you are right. Thank you so very much. Thank you for being so brave. Thank you for fighting for what matters. And thank you for choosing us here to share your story in English for the first time. We're very grateful.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, my friend. Thank you very much.
Wow. So that was a very, very interesting interview. I want to see what I can find on this guy. Khalid Al. Let's see what we can find. Okay, so this is okay. So he has an Instagram. Let's see. This is his Instagram. Okay. I think this is him. Is this him? I don't know if this is him. I don't know if that's his Instagram or not. Oops. Let me add this again. I wonder if he's on X. Let's see if we can find him on X. Do you think he'll be on X, guys? Let's see what we can find. Okay. Oh, yeah. Here he is. Okay. We found him. All right. This is the guy. Oh, wow. 181,000 followers. All right. So I just followed him. Let's see what he says here. Qatari dissident Khalid Al-Hayl calls Qatar's ruler Tamim bin Hamad the greatest liar in history. He treated me with respect and told me on the phone, let's meet one-on-one in Qatar. Nobody will touch you. The moment I arrived, they put me in prison. Buddy, that was your first mistake, was to trust, Islamic dictatorships, right? I mean, I don't trust them. I hope you learned your lesson not to trust them either. Oh, Tommy Robinson knows him now too. Let's end the Muslim Brotherhood. What's Tommy saying here?
Future state. So you may have seen recently that many influencers were invited by the state of Qatar from America. Well, I've been invited by the state of Qatar, but the future state of Qatar.
Oh, wow.
Who wants to end the Muslim Brotherhood. So you may have seen recently that many...
Look at that. Tommy's always on the right side. Good guy. Okay, interesting. So I'm glad to know this guy has an X account. So if you guys have X, definitely want to follow him because he seems to be speaking out quite a bit more now against Qatar and exposing the Qatari regime for what it truly is. I also found another documentary that I wanted to share with you guys here. Let me just pull it up. So here we go. So this was from a month ago. I haven't seen this one. Not familiar with the channel, but here, let's read what it says. So Israeli jets strike Doha, Qatar's capital, and Hamas haven, igniting global outrage. Explore how this gas-rich ally funds, shelters, and mediates terror groups, redefining power diplomacy and moral compromise in the modern Middle East. Okay, this looks like it would be pretty interesting to watch. Why is my playback speed 1.5? Want to be 1. All right. Okay, so let's watch this because this looks like it would be a pretty good primer on Qatar as well for people who are not familiar with Qatar. And I hope that now, having watched that interview between Aaron Milan, here, I'll share it again. So this was the video we were just watching. So it was an interview with Aaron Milan and the Qatari opposition leader. His name is Khalid Al-Hayl. He pretty much confirmed what the rest of us have been saying from the beginning with respect to Qatar being a terrorist state, Qatar being an enemy of the United States and the West, Qatar funding Islamic terrorism, Qatar being basically the Airbnb for terrorist groups, Qatar paying for conservative influencers or influencers of all stripes to basically go to Qatar and promote Qatar. So this gentleman who is the leader of the Qatari opposition pretty much confirmed everything that the rest of us have been saying. So if you want to go and watch that interview, it is on Aaron Milan's channel there. But let's go to this documentary, because I feel like this is also going to be a pretty good one in terms of explaining the real threat that Qatar poses to Western countries and Western civilization. That's a very good point. When the United States went after Osama bin Laden was hiding in Pakistan. What, there's no sound? Can you guys hear me? Uh-oh. What happened here? You can't hear me? Oh, you know why? Okay, guys, totally my fault. I forgot to switch the tab. There we go. Okay, so you guys were still seeing the old video. Sorry for that. My bad. My bad. Okay. I'm going to replay this from the beginning. So you guys are probably like wondering why I was just like staring at my screen. Um yeah, no, I forgot to switch the tab. Okay. All right. But thanks for letting me know. Okay. So we're going to watch this from the beginning now, and then I'll pause where he said that interesting thing, and then I will repeat that. Hi everyone.
On September the 9th, 2025, Israeli jets screamed over the Persian Gulf to do something unprecedented. They bombed downtown Doha, the capital city of a US ally that hosts America's largest military base in the Middle East. This wasn't a strike on some remote compound or military installation in the desert. The target was Hamas leadership sitting comfortably in the offices Qatar had provided them for over a decade. 6 people died in the attack, including a Qatari security guard who had the misfortune of being on duty at the wrong time in the wrong place. Within hours, the UN Security Council condemned the attack. The United States, a longtime ally of the tiny Gulf monarchy, called the strikes counterproductive. The European Union worried about regional escalation. The world rallied to defend Qatar's sovereignty, even though everyone knew who was in those offices. That's Qatar's achievement. They've made hosting terrorists so essential to international diplomacy that bombing those terrorists becomes a crime.
Okay, so that's the point that he made that I find very fascinating and also very accurate, because that's exactly what Qatar has done. When the United States went after Osama bin Laden was hiding in Pakistan. When the United States exterminated Osama bin Laden, people were happy and people were thankful, and no one condemned the United States for going after Al Qaeda terrorists, even though they were hiding in Pakistan. And so, why the double standard now when Israel went after Hamas terrorists in Qatar? Everyone was condemning Israel for the exact same thing that the United States did when they went after terrorists in Pakistan. And so, that double standard, guys, that double standard should really make you pause and take a step back and go, okay, why the difference here? Why the double standard? And that exactly what he said, 100% accurate. That is Qatar's greatest achievement is that they have now somehow convinced the West that for them to harbor Islamic terrorists is part of international diplomacy, even though it shouldn't be, right? So I just wanted to point, like, I agree with that 100%.
The permanent house guests. So understanding how Qatar became terrorism's five-star hotel requires looking at who exactly they're hosting and why nobody seems able to make them stop. Qatar's relationship with controversial groups, not exactly a secret. They've practically turned dealing with such organizations into an enterprise. It's conducted in glass office towers in downtown Doha, in luxury compounds with security provided by the state, in five-star hotels where peace negotiations drag on for years. Hamas provides the clearest example of how Qatar operates. Their relationship reflected their broader strategy of maintaining ties with everyone while committing to no one. They hosted an Israeli trade office through 2009, one of the few Gulf states to do so, then closed it during the Gaza war that same year, pivoting towards Hamas just as the other Arab states were moving away. This could be seen as fence-sitting, but more realistically should be seen as strategic positioning. Qatar saw opportunity where others saw liability. Former Emir Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani was famously close with Muslim Brotherhood figures across the region, and Hamas, as the Palestinian branch of the Brotherhood, fit perfectly into Qatar's vision of political.
Did you catch that? So Hamas is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, the same way that other military groups are branches of the Muslim Brotherhood in various countries. So, for example, in Sudan, you have the SAF. The SAF is the Sudanese branch of the Muslim Brotherhood as well, and they're currently engaging in genocide against Sudanese Christians as well. But yeah, Hamas is basically the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Political Islam as the future of Arab governance. For over a decade,
Let me go back a little bit here.
With Muslim Brotherhood figures across the region, and Hamas, as the Palestinian branch of the Brotherhood, fit perfectly into Qatar's vision of political Islam as the future of Arab governance. For over a decade, Hamas's political leadership had operated from Damascus, with Syria providing sanctuary to key figures like Khaled Mashal since the 90s. This relationship became strained after the Syrian civil war erupted in 2011 and fell apart completely after Assad made clear that Hamas was to support his regime's crackdown on the opposition, an impossible ask for the Sunni Islamist movement. Rather than scattering to hiding places across the Middle East, though, they had the fortune of relocating to Qatar at Doha's invitation. Mashal and Ismail Haniyeh accepted the invite eagerly, setting up operations that weren't rough underground safe houses, but elaborate homes and offices with the infrastructure to run a government in exile that controls Gaza. The arrangement was conducted entirely in the open, with Hamas leaders giving press conferences from their Doha offices and meeting foreign diplomats in five-star hotels. The numbers tell the story of Qatar's commitment. Since Hamas arrived in Doha, Qatar has provided an estimated $1.8 billion in support to Gaza. Officially, this is humanitarian aid, salaries for civil servants, fuel for hospitals, and reconstruction after the conflict. But critics point out that there's little meaningful distinction between supporting Gaza's government and supporting Hamas itself, as they've integrated so thoroughly. The money might go to hospitals, but that also freed up Hamas's own resources for tunnels and rockets. Now, the mechanics of this varied over the years, sometimes consisting of literal suitcases of cash. Back in 2018, Qatari envoys were caught on camera carrying millions in physical currency into Gaza. By 2021, the annual support had reached $360 million. Doha's envoy was blunt, quote, "You have to support them, they control the country." Now, for years, this arrangement allowed Hamas to operate with relative impunity while abroad, planning operations while Qatar's financial support kept Gaza functioning. Like house guests who've overstayed their welcome but know where you keep the spare key, Hamas had made themselves impossible to evict. The October 2023 attacks that killed 1,200 Israelis were coordinated by leadership operating partly from those very offices in Doha, though the extent of planning that occurred there versus in Gaza remains disputed. And that's where it gets truly surreal. After the attacks, when the world needed someone to...
Yeah, I just want to point out, no one ever really talks enough about the fact that Hamas leaders were literally in Qatar while the genocidal massacre of October 7 was happening, and that um, many of them organized it while they were in Qatar.
Someone to negotiate hostage releases, they turned to the country that was hosting the very leaders who orchestrated the massacre. Qatar's hosting of Hamas leadership made them indispensable to any diplomatic solution after October 7th, working alongside Egypt as the primary channels for negotiation, though only Qatar could offer direct access to the decision makers in Doha. Hamas wasn't Qatar's most controversial tenant, not even close. If hosting the group that attacks Israel seemed audacious even for regional standards where sympathies to the Palestinian resistance run deep, they also host one of the United States' longest-running military adversaries at Washington's own request. The arrangement began in 2013 when the Obama administration made a request that would have seemed insane a decade earlier. Would Qatar host an official Taliban political office? Keep in mind that this was during the heights of the war in Afghanistan, asking an official US ally to give the Taliban, the same group that harbored al-Qaeda before 9/11, their first official representation since the 2001 invasion. Qatar's acceptance led to an immediate diplomatic incident when the Taliban raised their flag in Doha, infuriating then Afghan President Hamid Karzai, who briefly withdrew from negotiations entirely in protest. Yet the office stayed open, and for 7 years, American diplomats found themselves meeting Taliban representatives in Doha's hotels and compounds in various efforts to wind down or end America's longest war. It was a bipartisan effort, too. Despite being initially set up under the Obama administration, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's September 2020 photograph with Taliban negotiator Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar in Doha.
Can we just pause for a moment? I don't understand how any person could look at this dude here, right, and think that this is like a normal functioning human being. I mean, at some point, Westerners need to realize that not everything is multiculturalism and diversity, right? Like if someone is, looking and dressing and acting like a terrorist, they probably are, right? I mean, what sort of world leader looks like, I don't know, what sort of world leader looks like he lives in a hut and doesn't have running water? I mean, come on, like white people. I'm saying this with all like politeness, like, come on. Like not everything is multiculturalism and diversity, right? I mean, there's giving the benefit of the doubt, sure, but I mean, come on, like this is just ridiculous, right? Like the guy can't even put on like a properly fitting outfit, right? I mean, I don't even know what to say here. I mean, and there are so many like, traditional clothes, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a suit and tie. I mean, when you look at the Arab leaders from the Middle East, they're not wearing suits. They're wearing their long robes, and they're wearing, their traditional, the traditional cloth and everything. But the quality is good, right? It's well fitting, and it suits them, right? Like this guy just, I don't know, he looks like he hasn't showered in 2 or 3 years, right? I mean, come on, guys. Like, jeez. It's ridiculous.
Gave the insurgents a diplomatic victory they'd craved for
Let's go back a little bit here. That guy's like
administrations.
That guy's outfit just distracted me.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's September 2020 photograph with Taliban negotiator Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar.
Oh, okay. So this is what the Taliban negotiator looks like. Okay. The Taliban negotiator. All right. I mean, no words at this point. No words.
Baradar in Doha gave the insurgents a diplomatic victory they'd craved for 2 decades. Everything about the US withdrawal from Afghanistan ran through Doha. The original February 2020 agreement was signed.
See, like these guys, okay, their outfits, right? Their outfits are nice, well tailored, well fitting, you know.
There, and Mullah Baradar went straight from his Qatari guest house to the presidential palace itself when Kabul fell in 2021. Rather than distancing itself from the victorious insurgent group, Qatar leaned into this role as the new government in Afghanistan's gateway to the
Oh, someone says the Islamic Republic looks like him 200%. Of course, yeah, the Islamic Republic, they dress like backwards inbred goat herders as well. That, we hate the Islamic Republic. They come from like a 7th century mentality and ideology. And yeah, unfortunately they dress like shit, and they look like terrorists because they are terrorists and they're occupying our country right now. It's really unfortunate. Before 1979, Iranian leaders were very, very well dressed. Iranian politicians were very well dressed. Our Shah at the time was, of course, very, very well dressed, the most well dressed man. But we're currently occupied by a bunch of inbred Islamic terrorists who dress like they belong in the 7th century.
To the world, becoming a transit point for evacuees and now hosting the relocated US diplomatic mission. The fact that no member of the international community recognized the Taliban's government until this year only compounded the necessity for such a role. The world is forced to conduct all diplomatic business through Doha whenever Afghanistan needs attention. So Qatar had the guest list from hell. But what really made them indispensable wasn't just who they hosted, it was their willingness to foot the bill. The indispensable mediator. The maddening genius of Qatar's strategy reveals itself through a fundamental paradox. While some Western politicians and commentators criticize them for sheltering Hamas, their governments simultaneously depend on Qatar to negotiate with the group. The Hamas political bureau that operates from Qatari-provided offices doubles as both a planning center for Palestinian resistance and the primary address for ceasefire negotiations. It's diplomatic flexibility that, shall we say, other regional powers either can't or won't match. But whatever you call it, it has yielded real results. This capability extends well beyond just Gaza. In 2008, Lebanon was teetering on the edge of a civil war. Hezbollah had shut down Beirut's airport in a stunning act of insurgency that demonstrated just how fragile the country's government's grasp on power really was. The Saudis wouldn't negotiate with Hezbollah. The group's deep Shia ties and connections made them deeply suspicious of one another, a sentiment shared throughout many of the Sunni-dominated Gulf monarchies. But Qatar, they invited everyone to Doha, Hezbollah included, and hammered out the Doha agreement that pulled Lebanon back from the brink. Where ideology prevented others from even sitting at the table, Qatar's transactional approach got results. This approach became absolutely crucial to international geopolitics in the wake of the October 7th, 2023 attack. The Hamas leadership that had coordinated the killing of 1,200 Israelis operated at least part from those same Doha offices, which had far greater access to international embassy and negotiations than they did in Gaza City. With the international community scrambling to negotiate hostage releases, such diplomatic proximity proved invaluable. American intelligence officials became fixtures in Doha's hotels, with Mossad, State Department, and CIA officials making repeated trips to coordinate negotiations. American officials found themselves publicly thanking Qatar for its vital role in securing captives' freedom. The relationship between Qatar and Hamas hasn't been without friction. By early 2024, Qatar reportedly grew frustrated with Hamas's intransience on hostage releases, with reports emerging that they threatened to expel the leadership if Hamas didn't show flexibility, though seasoned observers noted both sides likely understood these threats as negotiating leverage rather than genuine ultimatums. The dance has continued through 2025. Hamas stayed, negotiations proceeded, and even after Israel's unprecedented September airstrikes that killed 6 people, including a Qatari security guard, the Egyptian-Qatari mediation channel remained the primary diplomatic track. The strikes revealed the paradox. Israel was willing to bomb Qatar's capital to target Hamas leaders, yet still needed Qatar's officers to negotiate with those very same leaders. The Taliban arrangement demonstrated similar diplomatic utility. For 7 years before America's withdrawal from Afghanistan, US diplomats met Taliban representatives in Doha's conference rooms, searching for a negotiated end to America's longest war. The February 2020 agreement that set the withdrawal in motion was signed in Doha, and when Kabul fell in August 2021, Qatar played a vital role in coordinating the evacuation of 124,000 people, with nearly half passing through Doha's airports. The US then relocated its Afghan diplomatic mission to Qatar, making Doha the gateway for any dealings with Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, a role that no other regional power could or would play. From Qatar.
Yeah, because no other regional power wants to deal with the Taliban, because the Taliban is a terrorist organization. So, yeah, literally no other Middle Eastern country wants to deal with the Taliban. Only Qatar, and that's because Qatar funds them.
Qatar's perspective, they've created a unique diplomatic niche, serving as the indispensable intermediary for conflicts involving non-state actors that other nations won't recognize. Critics argue this amounts to legitimizing and protecting terrorists, while supporters counter that someone needs to maintain these channels.
No one needs to maintain channels with Islamic terrorists who want to blow up your societies and take over. This is basically just Qatar legitimizing Islamic terrorists and Qatar normalizing negotiating with Islamic terrorists, even though the rest of us know that you cannot negotiate with Islamic terrorists whatsoever.
Purely military solutions rarely work, and negotiated settlements require talking to all parties, however unsavory. The international community's continued reliance on Qatari mediation, even while criticizing their methods, suggests that pragmatism often trumps principle in the messy reality of conflict resolution. Checkbook diplomacy. So, if hosting controversial groups made Qatar useful, its willingness to pay for their operations made it indispensable. The Muslim Brotherhood represented Qatar's biggest financial bet on regional transformation. Unlike housing Hamas or the Taliban in Doha offices, this was about backing an entire transnational movement that Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE considered an existential threat to their monarchies. Yusuf al-Qardari, the Brotherhood's spiritual leader, has been broadcasting his weekly sermons from Qatar for decades through Al Jazeera. The network, which revolutionized Arab media when it launched in 1996 with controversial debates, had long given Islamists prominent platforms alongside its more independent journalism. During the Arab Spring, this existing tendency shifted into overdrive. The network began to function increasingly as the movement's mouthpiece. Speaking of the Arab Spring, when it emerged in 2011, Qatar saw its chance. As Brotherhood-affiliated parties won elections in Egypt and Tunisia and gained influence in Libya and Syria, Qatar opened its checkbook. Their immediate pledge of $8 billion when Mohamed Morsi and the Brotherhood took power in Egypt represented a massive bet on Islamist governance that their neighbors watched with horror. After General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi overthrew Morsi a year later, the contrast could not have been starker. Saudi Arabia and the UAE celebrated while Qatar condemned the coup and continued sheltering Brotherhood leaders, providing not just asylum, but active financial and political support. The growing tension with their Gulf neighbors over this support would eventually explode into the most serious regional crisis in decades. But Qatar, on the whole, remained committed to the Brotherhood. The pattern of financial support extended far beyond the Brotherhood. The US Treasury's 2014 assessment wasn't diplomatic. Qatar operated a, quote, permissive terrorist financing environment. This wasn't about state policy, though that was questionable enough, but about a system where private donors could openly fundraise for jihadists while authorities just looked the other way. The Syrian civil war became the proving ground for this permissive approach. What started as support for legitimate opposition groups morphed into something darker, with wealthy Qataris holding public fundraising.
Yeah, I agree with someone in the comments. Everything they accuse the West of doing, they have always done. 100%. Everything that Qatar accuses the United States or Israel of doing is something that Qatar itself has been doing for a very, very long time. And the reason that they put the accusations out there is because they want to flip the narrative before they themselves are exposed. And so, yes, 100%. Everything that they accuse the United States of Israel of doing is something that Qatar itself has been doing and continues to do.
Fundraising events for Syrian rebels, including groups affiliated with al-Qaeda's Nusra Front. They weren't hiding. They used social media, operated through Qatar's banking system, and treated funding jihadists as a charitable cause worthy of public celebration. One prominent fundraiser, Abdul Rahman al-Nuaimi, was designated by the US Treasury for financially supporting al-Qaeda, yet continued operating from Qatar for years. When pressed about why such individuals could operate so openly, Qatari officials would claim they couldn't control private citizens, even as they efficiently shut down any domestic dissent. The mechanisms for moving money varied, but followed recognizable patterns that authorities seemed curiously unable to stop. Hawala networks, those informal money transfer systems that leave no paper trail, operated alongside charitable organizations that expertly mixed legitimate humanitarian work with militant funding, while wealthy individuals would write checks at fundraising dinners where speakers openly praised jihadist groups. The Qatari government would occasionally make token arrests or announce new regulations that looked good on paper, but enforcement did remain conspicuously absent. The ransom economy reveals Qatar's approach even more starkly. In 2014, when 45 UN peacekeepers were kidnapped by Nusra Front in Syrian-controlled areas of the Golan Heights, their solution was straightforward: pay $25 million to al-Qaeda's Syrian affiliate. While Doha has publicly rejected this assertion, numerous outlets have documented the payment. Video footage actually exists of the purported Qatari funds being transferred to the militants. The peacekeepers were released, all 45 of them, and Qatar received international gratitude for securing their freedom. Critics pointed out that Doha had just handed al-Qaeda significant operating funds and created dangerous incentives for more kidnappings. Qatar's defenders argued that other nations' refusal to negotiate had left the hostages languishing for weeks with no solution in sight. Whether those 45 lives justified enriching al-Qaeda by $25 million, that depends on who you ask. What's undeniable is that Qatar's approach, however controversial, delivered results where others' principles had delivered only deadlock. The peacekeepers were only the beginning of what became a relatively established framework. Western journalists, aid workers, and religious pilgrims held by Syrian jihadist factions found themselves repeatedly freed through Qatari brokered deals that reportedly involved large cash payments. The monarchy developed a reputation as the go-to mediator for hostage situations, but also as the country most willing to pay. As the years dragged on, Qatar's reputation began to entangle it in some rather unfortunate situations. An incident in 2017 revealed just how tangled Qatar's payments had become. 26 Qatari royals, including members of the ruling family, had gone falcon hunting in southern Iraq, something of a tradition among Gulf elite, and there they were kidnapped by Kataib Hezbollah, an Iranian-backed Shia militia. The hostage crisis dragged on for 16 months, and when it finally ended, the details that emerged were almost too absurd to believe. The reported ransom reached up to $1 billion. But here's where it gets truly bizarre. Qatar didn't just pay the kidnappers. To get their royals back, they had to pay both the Iraqi Shia militias who held them and Syrian Sunni rebel groups who had nothing to do with the kidnapping. The reason was pure extortionate scale. Iran and its proxies had linked the royal hostage release to a completely separate deal in Syria, the evacuation of 4 besieged towns. 2 Shia towns needed safe passage, as did 2 Sunni towns. The Syrian rebels controlling the Sunni areas demanded payment to allow the evacuations, while the Iranian-backed groups holding the Qatari royals demanded payment to release them. Everyone saw Qatar's desperation as an opportunity to cash in, and they had no choice but to pay everyone. Iranian proxies, Syrian rebels, even groups actively killing each other just to get their people back. The cash component was stunningly literal. Qatar reportedly flew in suitcases of money, with Iraqi authorities briefly seizing around $500 million at Baghdad airport, underscoring just how physical these transactions were. It was the ultimate culmination of taking Qatar's philosophy to its logical conclusion. When in doubt, pay. It didn't matter that these groups were sworn enemies fighting a sectarian war. For the right price, Qatar would fund all sides simultaneously. This wasn't ideological alignment. Qatar is Sunni-led and doesn't subscribe to Iran's revolutionary Shiism. But they'd pay Shia militias just as readily as Sunni jihadists if it served their purposes. After the
Guys, that's a really important point, what he said there, because a lot of non-Middle Easterners, when they're trying to analyze Islamic terror groups and their relationships, they'll be like, oh, well, this one's Sunni and this one's Shia. That they're not going to be working together. They're going to be opposed to each other. When in reality, that's like a distinction sorry, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a division without a distinction, right? Like it's oh, sorry, it's like a difference without a distinction. Um, just because one is Sunni and one is Shia does not mean that that they won't support. And in fact, they do support each other because these Islamic terrorists are all united in their goal of, expanding Islam and destabilizing the West and, taking over various countries. So any person who puts out an analysis where, they'll be like, well, this group is Sunni, this group is Shia, therefore one doesn't support the other. For example, some people will say that, well, the Islamic Republic is Shia and Hamas is Sunni. Therefore, the Islamic Republic doesn't fund or support Hamas. 100% inaccurate, right? These people either don't know what they're talking about or they're deliberately lying. Because these groups will fund and support one another, and in fact, Qatar, being a Sunni country, the Islamic Republic being a Shia country, or like a Shia dictatorship, and Qatar being a Sunni dictatorship, it doesn't matter. They're still like big allies when it comes to achieving their goal of Islamic terrorism and expanding the caliphate and all that nonsense. So I'm glad that that this guy said that, because it's very important. Like he went over it pretty quickly, so that's why I just wanted to pause and just restate what he was saying, right? Like when it comes to Islamic terrorism, it's Islamic terrorism regardless of whether it's like Sunni or Shia or whatever. So I'm going to go back a bit and just so he can repeat that point.
Qatar's philosophy to its logical conclusion. When in doubt, pay. It didn't matter that these groups were sworn enemies fighting a sectarian war. For the right price, Qatar would fund all sides simultaneously. This wasn't ideological alignment. Qatar is Sunni-led and doesn't subscribe to Iran's revolutionary Shiism. But they'd pay Shia militias just as readily as Sunni jihadists if it served their purposes. After the 2006 Israel-Hezbollah war, Qatari reconstruction money flowed into southern Lebanon, rebuilding villages and Hezbollah strongholds where few other Gulf states would venture. Those same neighbors watched this with horror. Saudi Arabia and the UAE saw Hezbollah as nothing more than an Iranian terror proxy, yet here was Qatar treating them as legitimate political actors. They'd also maintained contacts with Yemen's Houthi rebel groups, getting them expelled from the Saudi-led coalition for allegedly cozying up to groups Riyadh considered mortal enemies. After October 2023, Qatar kept the money flowing to Gaza, even as international scrutiny intensified. Critics argued that with Hamas controlling Gaza, any support for the enclave's infrastructure effectively strengthened the group's governance when it wasn't directly siphoned off. Qatar, for its part, maintained its long-standing position. Humanitarian aid shouldn't be conditional on political approval of who's in charge. The people of Gaza needed water and electricity, regardless of who governs them. By 2017, under US pressure, Qatar signed a memorandum of understanding on terror financing and claimed to strengthen its controls. The Treasury praised expanded cooperation. State Department reports noted continuing counter-terrorism collaboration. But did anything really change? The fundamental willingness to pay remained, only the mechanisms became slightly more sophisticated. They weren't going to stop doing what made them indispensable. How to get away with funding terrorists. All right, so all of this just leaves us wondering, how does Qatar manage to pull all this off? Where does it get all of this money? And furthermore, even if it has the means to afford all these operations, how does it get away with them? The Taliban and the al-Nusra Front aren't exactly unknown to the international community. They are extensively sanctioned and internationally isolated. The money half of that has a very simple answer: natural gas, and a shitload of it. While the region is infamous for its vast oil reserves, natural gas is less common. Qatar alone, despite its tiny size, holds about 1/3 of the entire region's supply. This single resource generates tens of billions annually, making Qatar the world's second largest exporter of liquefied natural gas, behind only the United States. Unlike oil, which fluctuates wildly and faces increasing competition from renewables, LNG demand is growing as countries both transition away from coal, which burns far dirtier, and away from Russia's supply. Qatar has essentially been guaranteed income for decades to come. That money gets channeled through their sovereign wealth fund, the Qatar Investment Authority, which sits on over $450 billion in assets. They own chunks of Barclays, Volkswagen, Harrods, the Empire State Building, and seemingly half of London's premium real estate. A story complicated enough for another day. Let us know in the comments if you want to see that. All this investment gives them real leverage. Threatening Qatar means threatening your own financial system. But money alone doesn't explain.
And that's how they've managed to creep into all these various countries. It's by buying out their businesses and assets.
And how they get away with hosting groups that are considered international pariahs just about everywhere else on the planet. The real answer lies in a structure they've carefully been building over decades. First, there's the American Shield. Al Udeid Base alone hosts 10,000 US troops and serves as the forward headquarters of US Central Command. The majority of American military operations in the Middle East run through here, both in terms of strategic planning as well as physical equipment. Then there's the diplomatic cover Qatar has cultivated, which does.
If I was the United States, I would immediately shut down that US base in Qatar. You don't need it.
Does have at least some credibility going for it. They don't present themselves as sponsors or promoters of terrorism. They're mediators, humanitarian facilitators, and even regional stabilizers. When they host Hamas, it is for peace negotiations. When they shelter the Taliban, well, that was quite literally at America's own request. Every controversial relationship gets wrapped in diplomatic language that makes it politically difficult to challenge. All this isn't to say that they haven't faced real pushback, though. Back in 2017, it faced the test of the century. While most Gulf states had long coordinated their foreign policies, Qatar had spent decades charting its own course, maintaining relationships with everyone from Iran to Israel, from Islamists to secularists. From Saudi and Emirati perspectives, these went beyond policy disagreements. The Muslim Brotherhood represented an existential threat to their monarchies by espousing a revolutionary ideology that could topple their thrones, and they had had enough of Doha support for it. By June that year, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt decided that they needed to take action, and not just in the form of another diplomatic spat between the princes. They collectively announced a total blockade of Qatar. Land borders were sealed, airports closed, ships banned from ports. Riyadh even made the historically unprecedented and admittedly slightly hilarious move of threatening to turn the country into an island by digging a massive channel across their land border from sea to sea. They issued a series of 13 demands that essentially amounted to Qatar surrendering its sovereignty, including closing Al Jazeera and severing all ties and support to groups they categorized as terrorists, namely the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. It was a proposal that was dead on arrival. Qatar's defiance was remarkable. Despite being surrounded by these larger countries, they held their ground. Years of doing business with isolated states had its advantages, as it turned out, by making friends who weren't afraid of further reprisals. Within days of the blockade being implemented, Iranian cargo planes were landing in Doha with food, and Turkey fast-tracked military deployment onto Qatari soil to deter any Saudi military adventures. Western powers, specifically Washington.
So guys, that's a really good example of how the Shia Sunni thing, it's irrelevant when it comes to analyzing the Middle East and Middle Eastern conflicts. So if you didn't catch that, during this embargo between Saudi Arabia and Qatar, where Saudi Arabia cut off, all trade with Qatar. And remember, Qatar is a tiny island, and it basically shares one border with Saudi Arabia, and then the rest is the Persian Gulf. So there's it doesn't have any other borders other than Saudi Arabia. So during that embargo, when Saudi Arabia was trying to pressure Qatar, the Islamic Republic was bringing in supplies for Qatar, and that's where the Sunni Shia, analysis, it just falls apart, right? Because both Saudi Arabia and Qatar are Sunni. The Islamic Republic is Shia, right? So there's a conflict between Sunni, and then the Shia comes in to help the Sunni. So that's a very, very good example of how when you just look at the Sunni versus Shia aspect of the Middle East, you're not going to get the full picture. You're not going to understand what's going on. And it's just a very I find it's a very lazy way of trying to analyze and understand Middle Eastern politics.
Were not exactly thrilled with the development. The Pentagon made crystal clear that its operations at Al Udeid would continue regardless, the Gulf blockade be damned. Europe, for its part, was worried about the flow of natural gas that it heavily relies on to this day to heat its homes and run much of its industry. After 3 years, Saudi Arabia abruptly ended the embargo, and crucially, Qatar made no public concessions whatsoever. The very groups and institutions that sparked the crisis remained exactly where they were. Hamas leaders continued operating from their Doha offices. Taliban representatives maintained their diplomatic compound, and Al Jazeera broadcasts went on without interruption. The episode that was supposed to force Qatar into submission had instead proven their model was essentially untouchable. The September 2025 Israeli strike on downtown Doha should have been a watershed moment. For the first time in modern history, a nation had directly attacked Qatar for hosting terrorist leadership. Despite all their security agreements with Washington, the message from those F-35 seemed unambiguous. Hosting terrorists makes you a legitimate target. Diplomatic agreements be damned. Yet what happened after those strikes reveals just how deep the dependency goes. The Egyptian-Qatari mediation channel, the same track that ran through the officers Israel had just bombed, remains the only viable path for hostage negotiations or ceasefire talks. To whatever extent Jerusalem was still willing to move through diplomatic channels, the road ran through Doha. The international community's response was equally telling. The UN Security Council convened within hours to condemn Israel for violating Qatar's sovereignty, with the notable addition of the United States, which called the strikes counterproductive to regional stability. While not exactly an aggressive move, it nevertheless represents at least a pivot away from the hardline support for Jerusalem's actions Washington has taken over the past several years. But the September strike may have been just the beginning. Israeli officials have already framed the Doha hit as an unfinished job, and policy analysts note the attack redrew the rules by normalizing high-end use of force inside a US partner's capital. Israel's message was clear. We can and will strike Doha again. Qatar's role as Hamas's protector now comes with the risk of Israeli jets over their skyline, a cost-benefit calculation that no amount of American security guarantees can fully offset. This new reality has made Qatar's long-time mediation role increasingly brittle, with each diplomatic intervention now carrying higher political costs and greater operational security hurdles. The pressure is mounting from multiple directions. Netanyahu's government is explicitly demanding that Doha expel or prosecute Hamas leaders, while financial and legal security of Qatar's payment channels, both state aid mechanisms and private donor networks, is tightening. Even if Qatar doesn't face outright sanctions, the political space for banking restrictions and designations has widened considerably since September 9th. Yet despite the strikes, other nations have taken note of Qatar's lucrative position as the world's indispensable mediator. Turkey, for instance, has expanded its own hosting of Hamas figures, though nothing approaching the government-in-exile infrastructure that Doha provides. The Qatari model of leveraging geography and resources to become essential by dealing with unsavory actors may well be spreading. That isn't to say Qatar is alone in this approach, though. Oman, their neighbor to the southeast, essentially played the same role before Doha, just less effectively and less profitably. The style in Muscat has always been quite different, operating much more in the shadows and behind closed doors, rather than hosting formal non-state militants. They ran, for instance, the clandestine US-Iran channel that enabled nuclear negotiations, and they have played a reliable role in hosting Houthi representatives for prisoner swaps. This proliferation reveals something uncomfortable about how the international system actually works. We need countries willing to pay the ransoms we claim never to pay, to host the extremists we refuse to recognize, to conduct the negotiations we can't be seen having. Qatar recognized this gap between public principle and private necessity and built an entire foreign policy around it. Every government that condemned the September strikes while simultaneously depending on Qatari mediation knows exactly what they're doing. Qatar obviously won't face any real consequences for hosting terrorists, that much is clear. What's more interesting is watching other countries realize they can play the same game. When hosting extremist groups becomes a competitive market with multiple nations bidding for the privilege of being terrorism's preferred middleman, the whole concept of an international pariah starts to break down. Moral flexibility has gone from being a liability to being the most reliable path to relevance. Qatar has made itself so essential to the ugly business of modern diplomacy that even bombing their capital can't break the dependency. In a world that runs on managing crises rather than solving them, they figured out that being everyone's dirty friend beats being anyone's clean enemy. The question now isn't whether Qatar can continue this balancing act, it's whether they can survive it. Thank you for watching.
So that was really good.
On September
I definitely enjoyed that, but he speaks a little bit too quickly. And also, I think for people who know absolutely nothing about Qatar, um, a lot of information there to digest. And he speaks about a lot of various things, but he doesn't really go too much in depth. But highly recommend watching this. I just liked the video myself. So if you guys are interested, um, it's a channel called Political Fronts, and Qatar, a terrorist's best friend. That's what the name of the video is. I agree with pretty much everything that he said there. His analysis was spot on as well. I want to go to one last video here. This one's a shorter one. It's only about 7 minutes long. This one was put out 3 months ago, and it's called Friend of Terrorists, How Qatar is Buying Influence in Washington. And so for many of you who know nothing about Qatar, don't really know much about the Middle East, and you're all wondering, well, what does this have to do with me? This is, whatever's going on, it has nothing to do with me. I'm an American. I'm in my own country. Whether you like it or not, you are being impacted by Islamic terrorism. You are being negatively affected by Islamic terrorism, and your societies are under attack by Islamic terrorism. So you can either wake up and learn about it in order to arm yourselves with the tools and the knowledge you need, especially when dealing with politicians, or you can just ignore it, right? So this is a good, I haven't seen this video. We'll watch it together. Let's see if it's any good. It was posted 3 months ago, but only has 15,000 views. And so this video is called Friend of Terrorists, How Qatar is Buying Influence in Washington.
Influencing American Middle East policy. The wealthy Gulf country of Qatar and here in the U.S., the Council on American Islamic Relations are engaged in spreading extremist Islamic ideology. Qatar helps fund and support jihadist movements, while CARE has been accused of connections to the Hamas terror group. First, Dale Hurd brings us a look at how Qatar is spending billions of dollars to buy influence in Washington.
You might think, based on the warm relationship between Washington.
Wait, are you guys familiar with CARE? I should play that video from Bridget Gabriel again, because she exposes CARE and she exposes their link to the Muslim Brotherhood. Gabriel, CARE. Let me find it here for you guys. Here we go. There's certain videos that I should probably just have downloaded and saved on my laptop, because I usually play them once every other episode or something. But here's Bridget Gabriel. She is an American Lebanese. She escaped Lebanon, escaped Islamic terrorism, and she has been working hard to expose Islamic terrorism in the United States and other parts of the world. So here's her explanation about CARE, right? So she says, this was her post from November 15. The Muslim Brotherhood's plan to destroy America has been in action for over 30 years, and we are now witnessing the results. Terror-linked groups like CARE are celebrating the wins of 42 Muslim candidates in the 2025 election, and this is just the beginning. Wake up, America.
While all eyes were focused on New York and Mamdani, 42 Muslim candidates backed by terror-linked network have seized key offices across America. proving that the Muslim Brotherhood plan to infiltrate and destroy America from within is now a reality. 76 Muslims ran for office nationwide, 42 won, 3 races still pending. The 42 Muslim officials now occupy positions in some of the most influential jurisdictions in the country, from New York's mayor office to Virginia's executive branch, from Michigan's heartland to local school boards. The newly elected officials span at least 9 states: New York, Virginia, Michigan, New Jersey, Maryland, Washington, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. The list includes 6 mayors, 4 state legislatures, 20 city councils and commissioners, 6 school board members, 2 judges, and 3 other political positions. You've seen me talking about the Muslim Brotherhood plan for America and holding this document in my hand. They told us the plan. Now we're watching it unfold in real time. This plan was written in 1991. We are 34 years into it. And as a refresher, here's a paragraph titled, "Understanding the Role of the Muslim Brother in North America." Quote, "The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process. The brothers must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands." The last page lists 29 front Islamic organizations in the US, including the Muslim Student Association, which Mamdani was a member of, and IAP, which later became CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations. These Islamic organizations are celebrating a stunning milestone, the most significant wave of Muslim political victories in American history, with 42 Muslims elected to office across the United States. You would be excited too to add 42 Ilhan Omars and Rashida Tlaib's Jew-hating, America-hating people to public office. CARE, the unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorism financing trial in American history, is bragging about their successful political activism. CARE's federal super PAC, the Unity and Justice Fund, is the weaponized financial engine funding and winning U.S. elections. CARE is mobilizing Muslims and mosques as political launchpads to build campaign infrastructure. The result is a political machine operating from the pulpit to the ballot box. The 2025 elections shattered every record for Muslim representation in American politics, marking a historic leap into municipal and state power. CARE and its affiliates are preparing a 2026 directory of elected Muslim officials and expanding programs to mobilize more candidates before the 2026 midterms. The media calls this a historic first. Terror-linked CARE calls this phase 1. And what is even more scary, they locked shields with the left, whom I call useful idiots, working together to destroy America and everything you and I stand for. This is why you need to be engaged now. We need you in this fight, especially as the anti-Semites and anti-America unite. Join me and actforamerica.org.
Okay, so there's Bridget Gabriel's video explanation about CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. And so now, going back to this video, I'm gonna start from the beginning because they mention CARE, right? So now you guys can see the link between CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood in Qatar.
Influencing American Middle East policy. The wealthy Gulf country of Qatar and here in the U.S., the Council on American Islamic Relations are engaged in spreading extremist Islamic ideology. Qatar helps fund and support jihadist movements, while CARE has been accused of connections to the Hamas terror group. First, Dale Hurd brings us a look at how Qatar is spending billions of dollars to buy influence in Washington.
You might think, based on the warm relationship between Washington and Qatar, that this wealthy Gulf nation, awash in natural gas, is an outpost of democracy. After all, the country hosts the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East. It will also be the home to a new Trump International Golf Course and has given the White House a $400 million 747 jetliner. However, Qatar is basically a kingdom, and according to critics, no defender of Western values.
Qatar is the opposite of all that. Qatar is an Islamist ideological emirate that seeks in every single step of its activities to promote jihad.
Yigal Carmon leads the Middle East Media Research Institute, or MEMRI, and he says Qatar is a hub of Muslim extremism and a major source of international terrorism.
They do it in what you would call, on the one hand, soft power, using their immense wealth, but also by hard power, by supporting every jihadist movement on the face of the planet.
The laundry list is a long one. The mastermind of 9/11, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, was a Qatari government employee. Qatar has long sponsored the Muslim Brotherhood, which seeks a worldwide Islamic government. Qatar finances and hosts Hamas and has backed Palestinian terrorism. It has strong ties with Iran and the Taliban, and it broadcasts anti-Semitism and lies about Israel as well as anti-American propaganda through its global TV channel Al Jazeera. There have also been reports Qatar funds terrorists in Africa who kill Christians. On October 7th, Qatar blamed Israel for the Hamas massacre. And when Israel killed the mastermind behind the attack, Yahya Sinwar, the mother of Qatar's emir, in a now deleted post on X, wrote that Sinwar will live on and Israel will be gone. An Islamic nation that hates Israel and supports terrorism might not sound surprising, but Qatari influence runs deep in Washington and within the Trump administration. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, Middle East Envoy Steve Witkoff, and EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin have either lobbied for Qatar, worked for firms that did, or had a business relationship with the emirate. Last month, former Education Secretary Bill Bennett also registered as a lobbyist for Qatar. His stated role will be to say that the $6 billion Qatar has given to U.S. higher education is not for the purpose of spreading Islamic radicalism. Qatar has spent almost $100 billion.
Yeah, why would Qatar invest $6 billion in American universities if they weren't planning on indoctrinating and infiltrating youth? $6 billion is a lot of money to invest in American universities. But that's how they are able to create, centers for Islamic studies, and then they basically get to pick and choose who teaches these courses, and they also choose the curriculum, right?
Dollars to curry favor with the White House, Congress, academia, think tanks, and corporations. It also bought influence in previous administrations. When asked about the 747 being given to the U.S. by Qatar, President Trump suggested he'd be stupid to turn down a free, very expensive airplane. But if nothing is free in geopolitics, the price of the plane and the billions being dumped on Washington is more Qatari influence. As the tiny emirate, which sees itself as the true seat of radical Islam, hopes to leverage its close relationship with the United States.
Dale Hurd is here with more. Dale, with all this Qatari money floating into the U.S., you said nearly $100 billion. What is Qatar wanting in return?
Well, they're obviously buying influence. They want a place at the table. They're playing both sides. Look at them, view them as a double agent because they have ties with Iran. They have ties with terror groups. They also want to be strapped to Washington's waist. They've given us the largest base in the Middle East there. I look at it as a balanced portfolio. They're trying to mitigate the risks from both sides. But I didn't want with this piece to bash the Trump administration per se, but people need to be aware that Qatar is not Switzerland. I mean, they have got their fingers in some bad stuff, and they have access to the White House.
I'm sure the U.S. officials receiving Qatari funds or connected to firms that receive funds would say it's the other way around. The relationship is securing U.S. influence over Qatar and the Hamas negotiations, et cetera. So is that true, or is Qatar playing the Trump administration and members of Congress?
You know, Yigal Carmon, who was in the story, the head of memory, after the interview, he said, Dale, the U.S. is so, you people are so good, you're so nice, you can't imagine that there's a nation out there that is lying to you. But they do seek the destruction of Israel. They do fund Hamas. They did have a role in October 7th. They do host the Muslim Brotherhood. And we have the Emir Thani, the leader of Qatar, bragging that not the Saudis, but they're the true heirs of the Wahhabis. They come from the Wahhabi line. Well, the Wahhabi ideology, as we know, was the inspiration for 9/11, for the Islamic State, and for terrorism acts around the world. So they're not to be taken lightly.
Okay, very revealing. Dale Hurd, stay where you are. We'll be right back with you.
Wow. So I hope that gives you guys a little bit of an input, a little bit of an insight into how Qatar is directly impacting American policy. I mean, investing $100 billion into a country, that's not an insignificant amount. And you have to question what, where, how, why. Now, of course, we've seen all the other interviews and documentaries as well that I've played tonight for you. For those of us who joined halfway through, make sure you go back and you watch from the beginning, because I do play a number of different videos. But I hope that for those of you who tuned in tonight, whether you're on YouTube or you're on X, I hope that this gave you a little bit of an understanding into Qatar, like a Qatar 101. It's an introduction. There's still a lot more to talk about, a lot more to dig into. And I will definitely be going over those as well. But for now, I just wanted to thank you all for joining me, and thank you for sticking around. And, thank you to everyone in the YouTube live for your comments. And thank you to the mods as well. And if you enjoyed, make sure that you like and subscribe to my channel. As you can tell, for those of you who've been with me from the beginning, I have a new background now, a new set. I have upgraded tech, which means that, I think things are going to look much better now. And now that everything is set up and there aren't any technical issues, we're good to go. So I'm going to be starting my usual daily live streams again, starting tomorrow, Monday at 12 noon Eastern. So I look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you for joining. And as always, Payande Iran, Javid Shah.